Hi, recording and streaming.
All right, very good. Thank you. All right, so welcome everybody. This is a work session for the regular session of the South Kingstown Town Council. We are here to discuss goals and objectives and budget message. Rob, why don't you just start that discussion?
Sure. So I guess we should bring Zach in. What we were really going to talk about, although I'm happy to focus on the budget message, what we're really going to do was a budget overview. If the council wants to go through the budget message first, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the budget message sort of lays it out and then.
Yeah, okay. If we can bring Zach in, we can go through a couple of sections of the budget that I think do a nice job sort of laying out where we are on sort of the macro level stuff. We can talk about the total expenditures, total revenues that we're anticipating, sort of the background on where we've got our revenue estimates from. In large part, that's an important thing to know because we really don't have any formal final or official revenue projections from the state of Rhode Island. And we don't really have very solid estimates of what might happen as a result of legislation being considered by Congress with regard to assistance to schools and to municipalities. So it's been a very tricky budget in terms of preparing the revenue statement or the revenue projections. Really what we did where we could was we used last year's experience as the basis for our projections on revenue, mostly because that seemed reasonable. Last year should have been, in theory, a light year for us on most of those revenues. Hotel and meals should have been and were in fact down. There were a couple of places where last year's revenues during COVID actually may end up being higher than what we would really expect in a normal year. So our revenues from conveyance tax, real estate conveyance tax, and from recordings were up dramatically. We seem to have seen quite a bit of, the economists call it panic buying, folks trying to flee high COVID areas and coming into an area that they perceive to be, and in fact we continue to be the second lowest COVID infection rate in the state of Rhode Island. And we were actually a safe haven, relatively speaking. So I think that it might have been a rational panic, but we did see a lot of people coming to South Kingstown last year and purchasing real estate. So we saw a dramatic increase in sales prices, and we saw a dramatic increase in the number of transactions. So we actually had substantial growth in that part of our revenue suite. So we used it. I'm a little bit nervous about the fact that, it might not continue, but it did seem a reasonable basis for projecting next year's numbers. Zach, any thought on revenue projections? And I'm going to share my screen so we can pull this document up.
No, I mean, I think you've covered, the uncertainty around, we'll know better on the state side in a few weeks when the governor does release projections. I've not heard any updates yet, but as those come in, that would probably be the biggest uncertainty. We may see a slowdown in real estate conveyance tax, but too early to predict. And then the pass-through taxes, hotel and meals and beverage, that could improve depending on how we move, with vaccinations and things like that. And now that you've seen the governor has relaxed some of the policies around in-person dining and things of that nature. So some of that may improve from what we've estimated. And as we get better information, I will certainly provide it to the manager and to the council.
So most of our fees, construction permits and this sort of thing, really were not terribly impacted by COVID. So we didn't see dramatic changes. The one exception to that, and it was a dramatic exception to that general rule, is that the parks and recreation programs suffered tremendous reductions in revenue as a result of having to cancel programs. Now, for our program last year, wasn't disastrous because those programs essentially pay for themselves. So if we cancel a program, the fact that the revenues don't come in just means that we didn't have to pay or didn't have the funds to pay for a program that we did not run anyway. However, it did make things a little bit tricky looking out next year. And we heard from Terry last week about her approach to revenues and programs. And really what she was looking to do was to make sure that we didn't go all in, whole hog, and assume that we'd be back up to pre-COVID activity levels and therefore pre-COVID revenue numbers on the programs. But the revenues have been projected based on a partial year participatory programs. So that's the one place where the user fees and the fees really seem to have sort of been glitchy, if you will. Anything else about our overall table here, Zach, that you'd like to make sure folks are thinking about?
Yeah, no, I'll point to the discrepancy between the school program.
Thank you.
What we did is we incorporated all the expenses that they had provided for an estimate, and I put a little disclaimer down there that this, in the revenue side, assumes a level funded for the property tax transfer of the $55,994,000. Depending on what is decided, this will get updated before final adoption. But I wanted to put it in there as that we incorporated their expenditures because I did not want to go in and touch any of the expenditure line items. But I just wanted to incorporate what the manager had proposed for the property tax transfer, which was level funded. And this will have to be reconciled before final adoption.
And that really is an important design element about this budget. We did not go in and try to reconcile the school department's program. We didn't go in and say, you've got to cut here or you've got to cut there. We simply proposed that the revenue from property tax transfer be level and not increased in the next fiscal year. And we leave it really to the school department to determine how to make those adjustments. We have had conversations with the school department and have made some suggestions, but that's really beyond our purview. They have the authority to decide how to spend the monies made available to them. This table reflects the fact that they've requested more than we, Zach and I, have proposed. I'm going to go up to 9 and see if we can get the chart. This is just all revenues from all sources. The school operating budget, $61 million fund, includes the property tax transfer. Any questions on revenues? All righty. I'm going to go to
Rob, Councilwoman Bergner has a question.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Councilwoman Bergner.
Thank you, Zach. I was trying to get my hand up. So
Sorry, Abel, I didn't mean to jump out there.
it's okay. I apologize myself. So question. I'm just trying, there was a lot of words said, and we're looking at a screen that's small.
Yep.
So if, for the community to understand, the budget that you're proposing is a level funded budget for the schools, and the schools have presented a budget to us that has about $1 million extra in spending.
About $1,100,000 in extra spending. That's correct.
Thank you, because I read I read the budget message and it was confusing because it says the proposal would provide the same level of property support to the schools as was provided last year. I had that sentence and then I knew that the school budget was different. So what you're saying is you didn't make any changes. You're not proposing.
Yes.
Any changes that would be made are the purview and control of the school committee, not the purview and control of the town council. Okay, I understand. It was a lot of words, and I just needed.
Yes, no, I get it. It's complicated. So it's $1 million $58,301 is the difference. So that what we're saying is that the school committee has asked for $1,058,301 more than level funding from last year.
Okay.
And we, in this budget proposal, have suggested to the council that they consider level funding the school account or the school fund for next year. The rationale for that was that we anticipate an additional federal monies coming into the schools and to the municipality, to be honest with you, over the course of the next year. We anticipate significant revenues that cannot be accounted for at this time. The revenues that the state is anticipating have not been projected and have not been delineated for the municipalities. And the monies that the feds are considering for school functions and for municipal functions are still being debated, at least the last I'd heard. They're still being debated in the Senate, and we don't know what those monies are going to be, how much money we can expect. That having been said, we track these things, we watch these things, we listen to the League of Cities and Towns when they monitor these things. It does look like we're going to get significant relief on both the school and the town side. There's also some places where things are going to tighten up. So for example, there's state legislation pending that would not have us last year's student count or not have the state, the Department of Education use last year's student count as the basis for formula aid, but rather would go back and look at the 3 years before COVID and use the average of those 3 years as the basis for state aid. That would mean a much larger number for us because as everyone knows, we've got a declining student population in South Kingstown. So if we use last year's numbers, we'd be significantly lower than if we used an average of the 3 years preceding last year. So there's a number of things that are still, still have to flesh out. We presented this budget, the message tried to make perfectly clear that this cannot be the absolutely final word on this thing. As a matter of law, it should not be and is not. And as a matter of policy development this year in particular, it should not be because so many of the elements that go into designing a budget are still up in the air. Knowing what we're getting from the feds matters, knowing what's going to happen with things like legislation that would change the way that formula aid flows from the state matters, knowing what the state is going to do with regard to pass-through aids like hotel and beverage tax, all of those things make a big difference. And we're just going to have to track this for a few more weeks and maybe another month and a half. I mean, we've got some time here before we have to lock down a budget, and we're going to have to take every bit of that time in order to get to a good budget this year. What I tried to do this year with the message is I tried to give us a framework for having a broader conversation, because the detailed conversation, the conversation about the specific numbers is not nearly as fruitful this year as is typically the case. This year, these numbers, the concrete solid numbers, if you will, are not nearly set and all that hard. They're not truly concrete yet. I'm gonna go.
I just wanted to follow up really quickly on that on Rob. So Councilwoman Bergner, the school did present a budget that was balanced to the town. The revenues and expenditures were balanced. We lowered the property tax transfer in the proposal, which created that deficit, which will need to be reconciled depending on what will ultimately be adopted by the council, and then will be fixed. But the end product, the final budget, will be required to be balanced on both sides. But I don't want you to think that the school presented something out of balance.
No, they balanced the proposal that they sent by increasing the property tax transfer, which is what they do. I mean, that's standard practice.
So Mike, may I talk, Abel? I'm sorry, I didn't know. Can I keep going?
Go ahead.
Okay, it's very hard. I have the green screen, so I can't know, and my hand is up, so I'm so confused a little bit here. So when you talk about significant relief from the federal and state government, that means significant is a weird term. Are you talking 500,000? Are you talking hundreds of thousands of dollars? You're talking $50,000? Are you talking $1 million? Because that's
We could be talking millions, plural.
millions, plural, for the schools and for the town.
Could be.
Okay. Because that obviously, I hear what you're saying, you know, there could be, but if it's $50,000, you know, we would wrangle everyone angst in a different way. But
Right. And it's different for each of the things that could happen.
Okay.
So for the state formula fund, the estimate that the state has provided to the district is $110,000. If we use the 3-year average prior to COVID instead of the COVID year numbers, it's $110,000 additional funding. So it's not millions in that case.
And the other thing that's uncertain too is what potential restrictions they may put on any funds that are received. If it's completely unrestricted, then that's a whole different story than if it's tied to certain, you know, requirements that the town may or may not be able to meet. So we won't know that until as legislation becomes clearer.
Can you speak to the need to have a maintenance of effort? So like say the
Sure.
Fed give us $10 million
Yep.
COVID relief. We wouldn't just be able to, you know, reduce the tax rate by $10 million of.
No, and in fact, the state statute with regard to the school program says that we can't spend any less money this year in the coming year than we did in the previous year. Now, there's a ripple to that. The state statute actually says that if you've got a declining student population, you can use a per student value instead of the gross budget value. That having been said, we've looked and there's nobody who has successfully taken advantage of that provision of the law, and it's not clear how that would function, whether it would function, whether it could in fact be done. So we really, to do our maintenance of effort, have to at least level fund. We cannot reduce the amount of the property tax transfer from what was sent last year. And then the additional question becomes, what strings do the feds or the state, if they're going to put supplemental monies here for school programs or for that matter for other municipal programs? They typically, grant funds cannot supplant, they can't replace local effort. They have to do something above and beyond what the local effort is. So that does create a challenge for all of the programs that receive, you know, these one-time infusions of capital. Let us, for the moment, for hypothetical purposes, assume that we get $3 million between the town and the schools. Let's assume that they get $1.5 million, we get $1.5 million. That $1.5 million on their side has to go to augment their program. They're not going to be able to just, you know, pay teachers who they've got in the program typically. Now, there's some discussion about making these maximally flexible programs because we're trying to deal with very extraordinary fiscal and programmatic challenges right now. And if the feds do allow for maximum flexibility, and the state, which typically is custodian of these funds when they come in, they don't come directly to non-entitlement communities. They don't generally come directly to towns our size. So the state serves as a fiduciary for the municipalities. It serves as an agent for the municipalities in the administration of these grants. And they can put restrictions. They have their own procedures and rules that are going to come to bear as well. If we get $1.5 million, you know, we're not going to be able to say, woo, we're just paying, you know, the building officials out of that money, and we're going to put the building official money aside. We're going to have to identify a project. We're going to have to do the project that we tell the feds we're going to do with their money, and we're going to have to report out when we're done. So it does create a challenge because you don't want to be in a situation where you sort of shift things around and end up with a structural deficit. You've made it possible to run long-term programs with some sort of relief because of the local or the short-term monies. That having been said, you do have the opportunity perhaps to use a year in which you are flush with federal and state grant monies to adjust your underlying programs. And again, this is a concept that I was trying to point to in the budget message. This is a year in which we're not going to be strapped the way we could be. We're not going to be, in all likelihood, constrained on all sides. There will be some sides where we can do clever things, where we can do innovative and new things. Yes, that doesn't mean that we can completely replace or supplant or pay for old programs using these new monies, these new temporary monies. But we're going to have a lot of dynamic elements in the administration of the budgets at the school level and at the town-wide level. That's a much better place to start talking about shifts in the underlying programs than if you're sort of not getting any money coming in from the feds, you're not getting any additional money coming in from the states, and you're trying to make cuts at the local level at the same time. So this year just seems like a good opportunity for us to try to do things a little different, because we are going to have some breathing room, maybe not in the places we would like it, but we're going to have some breathing room that we're not normally going to see. That's very atypical. All right, Zach, you want to talk to us about expenditures? So I can have a drink of tea.
Councilwoman Bergner, do you still have a question? I see your hand up.
I do. Sorry, Zach. Sorry.
No, that's okay.
So I just want to just stay here just for one more second. So when the federal stimulus bill becomes a law, potentially, it could identify money for summer school programs, because I think, you know, the gaps that have been created in the last 18 months, that's one of the intended things. I think, I'm not 100% sure that might be something that the school committee might be talking about on Wednesday, correct? Because that's
correct.
And that's actually one of the places where we're going to see that breathing room really matter, because the schools, you'll note, in their budget carry about $100 and some odd $1,000. I'm not looking at the figures, but as I remember it, it's $100 and maybe $40,000 or $50,000 toward school stipends. They're summer school stipends that pay to teachers and to teachers' aides who work during the summer session. So if we're getting federal funds for that, now there's going to be more kids, there's going to be more activity, there's going to need to be more going on. Mm-hmm. It's one of those places where relief, some breathing room may make a big difference.
Okay, and then for the municipal side, what's you don't really have, like, or maybe I missed it, some ideas about how we might expand some programs. I mean, when you start to say expand programs, I'm thinking, you know, the office, the Department of Community Health, like, is that where we're going to go? Or, so did you have a thought about that?
Yeah, so that's one thing. You're right. We haven't, and we've been careful not to get too crazy about it, because you can get down a rabbit hole pretty quick. But there's, first of all, it depends on the money that they send. Typically, what they're talking about doing is running this through a CDBG, Community Development Block Grant funnel. CDBG typically is available for capital type items more than it is for service type items. Typically, the amount of money that you can spend through CDBG on services is pretty constrained. It's, I think, 20%. It's a small amount, 15 or 20% of the total allotment that comes to a state or comes to an entitlement community can go to services. If they remove that restriction, then you're exactly right. What we'd like to do is figure out if we can get up and running some sort of community mental health program, whether we can do something that is an intervention that is beneficial to the community this summer, this year. You know, it all depends on the color of the money and the restrictions on the money that come at us. I anticipate it is likely that we will be able to do some capital improvements if the money comes through CDBG. I am hopeful that we'll be able to do some services.
Thank you.
Councilman McEntee.
Zach, few questions. For the budget ending fiscal year 2021, is there going to be a surplus?
Depending on how the revenues come in, I think it'll be right now we're projecting a small surplus, about a little less than 300,000. But it really will depend on how revenues tie out at the end of the year, what we receive for final, if we receive any federal money in the current fiscal year. And then, we just received some state money. We're going through and reconciling that against what we received for state aid now. So, but right now, as I presented, we have projecting a small surplus.
Will that projected surplus put our undesignated fund balance above the max threshold, and like as part of our policy?
Good question. I have to double check the math, but I think we'd be very close, if not over. Which what we could then.
Is there potential to tap into the undesignated balance fund to reduce any potential increase in taxes this year, i.e. tap into the undesignated fund balance to make up for increases in expenditures so that taxes stay flat for the next fiscal year?
So well, Rob, you can.
Yes.
Rob,
The answer is yes, we could. I mean, we will be at about 18% is what we are sort of anticipating in the undesignated fund. So yes, we're above our high-end parameter on the undesignated fund. And we're going to have some of that spent down. In fact, this budget proposal takes $880,000 out of the undesignated fund balance to get us to a less than 1% property tax increase. Could we draw more out of the undesignated fund and go below what we propose as a tax increase of 0.98%? Could we go to zero? We could, but this is the same sort of strategy, and it turns out to be about the same, not quite, it's a little less costly than the PTT would be, property tax transfer for the schools would be. It's a little less costly, but it's still going to end up being about, Zach, what's getting down 9.8 going to draw out of the undesignated fund? It's still going to be a draw that means that our revenue reserves in the next couple of years are lower than they will be if we don't do that. And the challenge that I'm trying to get us ready for is what happens if we get into the school facilities project and the operational savings that we're hoping will materialize don't. If those operational savings on the school facility side don't materialize, we are going to have to be very careful and make sure that we've got other places to draw from. We're going to have to be able to draw from undesignated fund. We will be tapping into the undesignated debt fund reserves during that period of time. We want to keep the taxes low and stable through the period in which we're taking on that additional debt. That $85 million worth of debt, as we've all said many times now, is going to cost us about $2.5 to $2.7 million a year in debt service. That's after the state contribution. That's after the state's share of this thing. We're going to have to cover a pretty good chunk of money each year for the duration of those bonds. We want to ease into that period. We want to ease into that increase because as we're talking about this tonight, the PTT increase of 2% really is only valued at about $1.1 million. We're talking about a impact on the tax rate if we're not careful, that's twice that in order to deal with debt if we're not prepared for it, if we don't have the reserves to draw from. So our advice, my advice, Zach and I have talked about this, is not to draw any more than the $880,000 that gets us to the high end of our policy with regard to undesignated fund. Going lower right now probably isn't as prudent as keeping those monies there so that in the future they're there if we need them. That's the advice.
So Zach, 800K drawdown from the undesignated fund is already in this recommended budget. How much will we have to draw down to bring that 0.98% increase in taxes to a 0% increase?
I don't have that number, but I can get you that exact calculation. You'll have that, if not later tonight, tomorrow.
All right, thank you.
Zach, do you want to talk about expenditures on the general fund side?
Sure, if you want to just go back to that chart or,
This one?
My hand up.
yeah, oh, Councilwoman.
So when you say things like they may not deliver, the deliver is my word, but when they may not come through and provide their operational savings, what recourse and choices do we have? I mean, when you say things like that, I think everyone should get a little nervous that they're not going to deliver their operational savings. I mean,
I'd be careful about saying it's them and us. I mean, we really are all operating as a community here, and it's a question of whether or not what we're anticipating, what their consultant has predicted, will come to fruition. You know, I don't want to cast this as if the schools decide not to do what they promised to do, because I don't think that's the challenge. I don't think that's the danger we face. The danger we face is that what we're projecting, what we're guessing at, and it is in fact always a guess. Knowing the future is impossible. We are always, with all forecasts, guessing at what might happen in the future. So it's not a question of whether we have recourse if they fail to do what they've promised. It's really a question of what happens if the environment takes shape in a way that we are not anticipating. It's about the risk of what happens if what we're hoping happens doesn't come to be. I want to be careful. I don't think that this I don't think it's helpful to think of this as, you know, bureaucrats, you know, just sort of gaming something here. I think this is more than that.
I understand, but part of the logic of some people agreeing to move this stage
Right.
2 on was predicated on operational savings coming from the school side. I feel like and there was very little evidence. We don't need to rehash it, but there was very little evidence concrete that they had identified those savings. So now when you say this now, that there's still, what are we going to do? I feel even more angst.
Yeah. So I want to ease that angst to the extent that I can. And the best thing we can do to alleviate that angst, I think, is to make sure that we've got belts, a belt and suspenders. And that's really what this recommendation is about. It's making sure that, you know, we're working toward a facilities plan that should have $1.1 million worth of operational savings. That's our belt. And if the belt breaks, we've got suspenders. We have reserves that we have not spent down prematurely that are available to avoid the embarrassment that comes when our belt breaks.
I appreciate what you say. I understand what you're saying. I still think everyone should be cautious because it doesn't sound like you have confidence that they can meet what I consider is the floor of what they should be saving. And, you know, it shouldn't be the ceiling, it should be the floor, because every time they can achieve savings, it's money that we're not taking out of the entire community. So just saying it.
I have a great deal of confidence in the notion that we'll see some savings. Whether we're going to see $1.1 million worth of savings in the critical period as we're loading the debt is not something that I can predict any more than the consultant has. I'd like to have some suspenders just in case.
Right. Rob, the one question, is it the ceiling though? I mean, I think what I hear Deb saying is, you know, is this sort of the median forecast for
The
say
1.1?
We could go down, we could go above that.
It could in theory go above that. The consultant did not produce a range that included higher numbers. So you're right, it could. We could see savings that go beyond the 1.1. And, you know, during the design phase, you may actually see lots of things happen that improve those operational savings. That's absolutely possible.
Any other questions for Rob at this point? Time is going quickly here.
Zach, do you want to just run us through the spending on the town side and our total increase ask on the town side? And explain, I know there was a question, we're coming in with a $320,000 increase in our town expenditures. But there was a question about how that relates to the overall budget. And Zach, I'm going to leave you to that one.
Sure. So as you heard you saw the departments presented their budgets the other night, so you can see the increases by department there. Overall, it's about a 1.2% increase on the, I think it's 1.17 is the increase in the general fund total expenditures. The majority of that are salaries and benefits of about 76%. These pie charts kind of break down the different funds and their expenditures, so you can see all funds. That first pie chart on the left is the school fund, all expenses, the general fund, obviously making up the two bigger pieces. And then each one, whether it's the enterprise fund, the general fund, down below on the right-hand side, Rob, I don't know if people can see that chart. Within the general fund, you can see the breakdown, public safety making up the biggest slice of the pie, followed by public works and overall general services. You heard from all the department heads the other night. I think they all went through their budgets. They did they really did a hard look trying to increase where they had to contractually. If not, most of them stayed pretty level where they could. And that was the request that they were given, which is why you didn't see anything from the department level changed at the proposed level. We thought they came in, with what they need to, run their departments.
And so with some reductions in program expenses and some funding coming in from the undesignated fund balance, again, that 880 coming in from the undesignated fund, the net increase in town spending is $320,000 for the year. We are happy to answer other questions, but I am noting that we only have about 20 minutes to talk about goals and objectives if the council wants to do that.
Just for making the math work in my head. So the only increase in expenditure would be that 300 and some thousand, or is there some other? I mean, wouldn't that be the number that Rory was looking for if we wanted to get down to zero?
Yeah, Zach.
That's correct. I mean, that is correct. We'd have to offset, if you wanted to level the taxes down.
Yep. So our draw from the undesignated fund balance then is going to be about 1.2 at that point. No, 1.1, right? 1.1.
Yeah,
well,
I mean,
so it's 1.2.
Well, not exactly, because it takes into account all outside revenue before you come down to the levy.
Yeah, that's true.
Like I said, I can put that math together for you, and I'll send it out just so you have it and you can be aware.
Excuse me, but isn't the projected surplus at the end of the year the 300,000? So it's really just a no net change. If you're projecting 300,000, and that's what you need to level fund and not have a tax increase, you have it.
Yeah, if all assumptions are met, you're right. You would.
Very close.
Very close.
So it's there. Just pointing it out. They're all the same number. It's going we can either put it in the undesignated fund or put it.
We're going to have a transfer coming up later tonight that we might have some discussion around here related to this topic. Those funds, they can be very important programmatically. We don't budget precisely. You can't. It's not possible to get everything exactly right. You can't absolutely predict how much a truck is going to cost or how much tree stump removal is going to cost. So you need, when you find that one thing is more expensive than you expected, you need to be able to have relief in the things that were less expensive than what you had predicted. So we have an item on the agenda tonight, which is just that. Transfer from a capital account that was dedicated to a truck purchase that we're asking the council to move to tree and tree stump removal. If those monies are committed to some other purpose, then they're not available there for programmatic purposes. And that is a feature of our budgeting program as well. The surplus isn't a surplus if you spend it, and if you have things that the council agrees are necessary to spend those monies on, then you don't end up with that large amount of money coming into the undesignated fund balance at the end of the year.
Councilman McEntee, I saw your hand.
Yeah, I just want to clarify some things that were just pointed out here. So Zach, the drawdown on the 800K does not include the projected 300K surplus that may be realized at the end of fiscal year 2021. Is that correct?
No, that's correct.
Okay. So there is the possibility, as already been pointed out, to just use that money to offset the $300,000 excess of expenses over revenues for fiscal year ending 2022. And
Yeah,
that, as a result, would have a 0% increases in property taxes for the budget fiscal year 2022. Is that right?
yeah, we could bring that. I mean, that would help in bringing that in line to have a 0% increase.
If the assumptions about what we're going to end up with are correct, now remember, we're operating only on projected expenditures for the last quarter of the year. So if nothing blows up, if nothing breaks, I'm sorry?
It would only take effect essentially if the projections are realized.
That's right. We won't know until the end of the fiscal year how we ended up the fiscal year.
Okay, I'd like to implore the council to consider this when we vote in the preliminary budget on March 22nd. I think any effort we can make to have no increase in property taxes is important, considering the pandemic, considering the state of the economy. That's where I stand right now. I'm happy the information has come out, but that's what I think would be the best move. Obviously, I think the town manager and the finance director should consider that and I guess report back to us as to their recommendation on it.
Yep. So what I will say about that to this point is obviously we think about these things, and the issue is really this: the municipal program over the last year was sustained without any increase in property taxes, and we did that by really tightening belts. The hiring that was scheduled, the positions that were approved for hiring were not filled, or they were filled very slowly. And we're not going to see those same savings. So for example, I'm going to take Zach's deputy's position as an example. Part of the reason that we've got the surplus this year is because we had that position vacant for, Zach, was it 10 months?
About 9 months, yeah.
9 months. So not having to pay for that position for 9 months means that the money that was budgeted for it is available. However, this year, there's someone occupying that position. So it's not, we're not in the same environment, and we're going to have to find a way to do that in a different structure, a different environment than we had last year. Well, we'll come back and report. I understand your objective. I laud it, and we'll figure it out.
Councilwoman Berger, your hand's up.
I absolutely agree with Rory. I think that we should strive for that. This pandemic has hurt many people. I also would point out that you do have a position that you were unfilled this year, and then you're trying to make it a full-time. So there is a way to maybe delay some of that. I hear what you're saying about, I don't want to squeeze the municipal side so much. We're not necessarily, it's not necessarily a huge scope of the budget, but I do think that lives have been changed. I agree with Rory. And I just want to point out that you are expanding one position. It could be there. And also at the end of last year, you reported $500,000 went to the undesignated fund. So
Right.
It really just asking the community just to pay the same. And I can't agree. I wholeheartedly agree with Rory. We should be trying very hard to do that, to deliver for this community.
Yep. So we can certainly dig into it and make sure that we're not causing tremendous injury to any part of the program. If we're not, we'll tell you that. And if we are, we'll advise you where the danger is to the program. I will report out on the personnel function because the council had asked for some feedback on that. So I have had a conversation with the Director of Administrative Services, and we really have come up with 3 possible ways to deal with the function. One is to make no change, to simply keep the function exactly as is. Adding the additional person would mean that we might free up some of the director's time so that she can focus on new training things and this sort of thing. Another possibility is to create the department, establish the structure, but have a third person identified as the department head reporting through the Director of Administrative Services until the department's programs are defined and up and running. And a third possibility would be to have the Director of Administrative Services serve as both the Director of Administrative Services and the Acting Director of Personnel for a period in time, again, until the program designs are up and running. We're still looking at those 3 options. We haven't come to any conclusions at this point, but we will report back to you when we've had a chance to sort of ferret out which of those is going to meet our staff requirements best.
Councilwoman Berger?
So between Wednesday and today, you met with the Director of Administrative Services and you reviewed those options?
Between Wednesday and Friday, on Friday, I had met with the Director of Administrative Services. We had a conversation about how we had confusion. And then over the course of the weekend, I proposed those 3, I wrote those things up and I sent them to the Director of Administrative Services this morning. She was out this morning, so we didn't get a chance to talk about them in great detail, but they are on the agenda for us to discuss.
Okay, thanks.
Great. Thank you for that clarification. I hate to take us back real quickly, but to the budget, did I see that the projected increase was a 14-cent increase over the previous, as it is written now? So to me, usually a penny of tax rate yields about $43,000 of revenue, something like that. So my question is, if we were raising it by 14 cents, wouldn't that come to be like a $600,000 increase in revenue? We can go back. I just want to make sure we're doing
no,
multiple.
That's right. So the tax rate currently is 14.45. The tax rate increase is 0.98, which would be 14 cents. But you're right, a penny typically is close to about $40,000. Zach, any insight? What am I missing? Did we lose him?
Sorry, I'm sorry. I didn't realize I was on mute. Yes, that's correct. But the increase was that we used one-time revenues last year, so your levy had to go up. So the one-time revenue from the school of $1 million was factored into fiscal 21. So you reduced last year what the levy would do to get to the 0% tax rate increase for the taxpayer. So this year, you're comparing your levy from last year to your levy this year. Your levy had gone. So that's the delta between there is what is driving the larger, the
Gotcha. Okay.
pennies.
So thank you. That helps explain it. And that's something that we should take into account next year because we'll be in the same position if we're backfilling funding from undesignated fund balance.
So if we're going to use undesignated fund, one of the places I'll look to is find as many one-time expenditures. So you're not going to create, a potential structural issue going forward. But, like I said, we will go through, all the one-time expenditures first, then we can, draw from there. Because if you don't, then it becomes an ongoing expenditure that you're going to have to make up from, later on.
So,
Sorry, Rob. Councilwoman, no, okay. Rob, go ahead.
So we can jump into goals and objectives, but we only have about 8 minutes. So I'm going to suggest something, and Mike Ursilla's in the room. Mike, if this is going to offend open meetings rules at all, let me know. But what I would suggest is that each council member mark up this section of the goals of the budget or of the budget document. Just mark up the goals and objectives and send them on to me, and Colleen and I'll insert and delete, and we'll do some sort of a red line version that we could then present to the council at the next meeting or a meeting 2 down, so that you've got sort of a consensus or emerging consensus document to work from. We have got 7 minutes, and I'm certainly happy to make any changes that folks would like to make right now, but it might make sense for us to do this as hub and spokes kind of, you send in and we'll make the changes and we'll report back out to the council.
Rob, this is Mike. That would not violate the OMA as long as each council has sent their comments directly to you, and then you compiled them all and sent them back out to everyone.
Thank you.
All right. Everybody feel good about that suggestion? Council? All right. I'm not seeing any objections to that, so that sounds like a plan.
All right. So since we have just a little time, I'd like to take one minute and report out on a peculiar thing. Over the weekend, related to the personnel discussion that was had last week, there was a Facebook post from a Facebook user named Wayne Schaefer, who indicated that I had taken a job with RGB and that I'd be leaving as town manager. That's not true, and it also doesn't seem to be true that Wayne Schaefer exists. His profile on Facebook indicated that he was a town employee, has been a town employee for many years, and that he's a South Kingstown resident. He is not a town employee. He doesn't appear in the town database. He is not apparently a voter in South Kingstown, and he apparently does not own land in South Kingstown. He has no posts to Facebook. He's got a profile. He's got 12 friends, and he seems to be a fictitious entity created apparently for the purpose of simply making posts about South Kingstown local government operations or local government things. I just point that out because, we are in fact in an era when false flags and false Facebook accounts and postings are more common than they ought to be. But I am not leaving the town of South Kingstown to go work for anybody. And Wayne Schaefer doesn't seem to be a real person. So if you saw the post, try to track Wayne down.
All right. Good luck with that. All right. Any further discussion? I know we do have the regular work session where we can go over the agenda coming up, and we have 3 interviews tonight. So maybe we have a few minutes here if people had questions about the agenda, or we could take a really quick 3-minute break too.
It's a long agenda. If you'd like, I can sort of the big one that we've got here that I think is going to be most complicated is related to the school bond referendum scheduling. That item is very complicated because the referendum on a bond is actually an approval of a state legislative act, and therefore is a state election, and therefore has to be done on the first Tuesday after the first Monday of a month. That means for us, it would have to be either May 4th, June 8th, July 6th, I believe, August 3rd, or September 7th. The school department has told me today that really September 7th does not work because it's too close to the deadlines for some of the bonus points under the RIDE funding program. So we really are looking at something in all likelihood in May or June, which means May 4th or June 8th, simply because those are the only dates available to comply with the state statute. So it's getting to be a tight schedule. I'll have much more to say about it. I'm happy to answer any questions in the 3 remaining minutes before 7. I'll stop sharing too.
Any questions about that, or?
Can I ask just a random question? So would this be the time that we could ever ask you a question about the comprehensive plan? Like what's ahead for us? Or am I gonna ask that at the meeting? Like, we got the comprehensive plan. What's the next couple of steps? You know, it's not on the agenda, but I don't need to add it to the agenda, but would I talk about it now?
You could do it now, or we could talk about it at, during the town manager's report is a sort of typical time if you want, you know, more public engagement on that discussion.
That's fine. I just never know when I'm supposed to insert the new items.
It's Mike, and it's always good to ask those questions. I agree, that would be appropriate under the manager's report. And if it doesn't fit into any specific agenda item, we can always vote to add something to the agenda and discuss. So never a problem with discussing something and adding it to the agenda.
Yeah, so if we were going to have like discussion about it, then we would, you know, add it as an, you know, agenda item for discussion. And we
Okay.
could do that at any point.
And when do I ask for to add the item? At any point or right before we start the meeting?
You could do, we could add it at the beginning of the meeting, or, you know, if we got to that, you know, after the town manager's report, say you had a question, he answered it, and then you thought that there was a basis for having further conversation on that item, then you could make the motion to add that agenda item to the agenda at that point. You know, there's different ways you could go about it.
I just didn't know at what point do I say I'd like to add something to the agenda?
You know, both, I guess, or like whatever you
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
Either.
It's not in the rules. It doesn't tell you how to do that.
Yeah.
Now, it is, in many councils, if individuals want to add things to the agenda, they do it up front. Usually after the consent agenda is adopted, you could say, by the way, this is not on the agenda, but I would like to have it added for discussion during this meeting. So that's what I would suggest after the consent agenda.
Little tip, it's coming.
All right, very good. All right, we have reached 7 o'clock, so maybe we can get started with our interviews now. Let's see who we got. I see Dan Kimber, I believe he is on there for.
Abel, when you get ready to interview Helen DeSanto, she is the telephone caller at the top of the list.
Why don't we just bring her in first then?
Okay.
All right, Helen, you've been brought into the meeting. If you're listening to me.
Am I unmuted now?
You are unmuted. You did it. Great.
Good.
All right. Well, you have been, you've thrown your hat in the ring to be reconsidered for the Board of Canvassers. You've been serving very ably for a long time. Tell us a little bit about your experience and why you want to keep doing it.
Well, I've been involved with the town off and on for years. I enjoy being involved. I enjoy having something to do with it. It's a very good board. The three of us are we work well together. We manage well. And we get things done. So far, the elections have been fine. And I just enjoy keeping doing it and helping the town. I've been working for the town a long time. I was the first woman ever elected to the town council way back. So, and I've been going ever since, so doing something. So this Board of Canvassers is very, very good work for me.
I'm happy to hear that. Are there any questions from other council members? Councilman Mackin?
Hi, Helen. Just want to say thank you for your service. I understand you've been involved for a long time now. I actually received a letter from your state representative, and I'd like to read it aloud to the council here.
Thank you.
Dear President Collins, Vice President McEntee, and members of the SK Town Council, I am writing to you today to give my full support to Helen Rose DeSanto for her reappointment to the South Kingstown Canvassing Authority. Helen is a constituent of mine and has served on the Board of Canvassers in SK since 2012. She has shown the dedication and commitment needed to serve on this board throughout her tenure. It seems most appropriate to appoint Helen today on International Women's Day. Not only has Helen served honorably on this board, she was the first woman elected to the SK Town Council in 1973. I fully support her reappointment and ask you all for your support of her application. Best regards, Representative McEntee, District 33.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mary.
And I worked for, I was a moderator. I worked in the voting, and I was a moderator for about 20 years. So, I'm familiar with what goes on there. So, whatever else you have to say. But thank you. That was a very nice letter.
You have a wealth of experience, it is clear. Councilwoman Bergner, you had a question or a comment?
Yeah, I'm glad that great letter was written. It is International Women's Day, and I think it's fitting that one of our first women pioneers in an elected office we're speaking with her today. So Helen, I've tuned into the Board of Canvassers meetings because you've had so many this year, and despite having to only call in and everyone else is on Zoom, you are a full engaged person, and I appreciate all your hard work. I'm sure you've worked with Barbara Hackey and
yes,
and the town when we had the financial town meetings, the parliamentarian, I forget his name. I can see his face, but I want to recognize that your contribution, and you're a role model to other people. That service is lifelong. Thank you, Helen.
Oh, thank you. That was very nice. I thank you very much. I've always enjoyed doing what I do.
And Councilwoman Rose, do you have a question or a comment?
Just a comment. I just wanted to echo what Councilwoman Bergner and Councilman McEntee said. I think it's so fitting to have you here tonight on International Women's Day. Thank you so much for your contributions and for blazing the trail for the rest of us. You are appreciated.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
And speaking of Barbara Hackey, she was the moderator when we had the town meetings. So one day we were talking, we were joking, and she said, "You want to trade?" I said, "Okay." So that's what we did. She went on the council, and I went to be the moderator. That's what we found. In the next election, of course, that was.
That's a great story. All right. Any final questions for Helen? All right, very good. Well, thank you for coming tonight and for applying and being willing to serve again. We should be able to let you know fairly soon.
Thank you very much for having me, and thank you for all to everyone has talked. I appreciate everything you've said, and I appreciate you guys are doing a good job. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night. You too.
All right, and now if we could bring in Dan Kimber, I saw his name right up there, who has applied to be on the Economic Development. All right, Dan, at this point, you just need to unmute yourself, and if you want us to see you, you can hit that. There we go. Welcome.
Evening, everyone.
And oh, that's a neat effect you got going on.
Yeah, I don't know what, I didn't turn anything on. What did they do?
Well, we can see you, so it's working. Thank you for applying for the Economic Development Committee. Tell us why you'd like to be a member, what skills you think you bring to it.
Yeah, I reached out a couple of years ago, actually, and inquired to someone at the town hall as to how to get more involved in local government. and, put some thought and time into it at that point in time, and looked at personal life and figured that wasn't the right time. So as my kids have gotten older, right, more time is becoming available. So I'm trying to figure out, how can I give back, some things and be involved in the community, and also use my, education and what I do for work to try to help the area. Currently a plant manager for Modine Manufacturing over in West Kingston, right? I always think this area is kind of a neat area of businesses, right? There's a mix of things here. And there seems to be a small group of well-labeled manufacturing type businesses in the area, kind of cottage industry, or in our case, even or up down the road, even some bigger stuff. So at work, we've gotten involved in acquisitions in terms of businesses, actually product lines we've bought and brought in. Sales marketing piece, right? Primarily our products go through distribution. So they've handled those two areas. Prior background, currently, what we do there is commercial HVAC, prior background in automotive, ag and heavy truck, those kind of things. Education side, mechanical engineering degree, and then an MBA with a specialty in entrepreneurship. So it's always kind of one of the things that's interested me. And trying to put that skill set into something I thought made sense and where there was an opening that I could help with the town.
All right, thank you, Dan. Other questions for Dan from the council? Councilman Berger.
When you get to come back, Dan, and watch this, you're like a movie. Like your eyes are like.
I took my glasses off a second, and I've used Zoom on this laptop before, but I'm looking at myself, and for some reason I feel like my chest is, I'm grass. And I don't
Your
know.
eyes become neon green.
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel like it's Parks and Recreation, but so I was just curious about Modine. It's located in West Kingston. Are you near APC and Schneider, or are you somewhere else?
Sorry, I think I figured out what, maybe one of my kids had done that apparently for school. Yeah, we're right down the road from APC Schneider, Arnold's Lumber is there, South County Post and Beam, right? Kind of right next to the swamp back in there, so to speak.
The reason I asked that, because you talk about being on the Economic Development Committee and Commission, and then being involved and maybe working and because that building is for sale, and trying to encourage the right activity to happen there would be a good thing. So I just was curious. So you would be a neighbor?
Yes. Yep. Yeah, we are a neighbor. Yeah, it's been interesting over there. It's not many people know, I don't think, we're back there. And looking at some of the proposals that have come across in that area, right, and being a part of the businesses in that area, the other thing kind of opened my eyes a little bit to some of the stuff going on. I think at one point in time, I don't know if it was across the zoning committee or not, but talk of a big like power storage facility in that area, right? My understanding is APC, I think, is exiting that building, or mostly has. Big power infrastructure setting there. And then, a couple other neighbors in the area. So.
Thank you.
Any final questions for Dan? All right, very good. Well, once again, Dan, thank you for being willing to serve the community in this fashion. I think you have a great, resume, case to be made. We should be able to let you know fairly quickly. We do have vacancies on the committee, and I think we could use you. So thanks again for coming forward, and have a good evening.
All right, thank you. You too.
And our last applicant tonight is Susan Walsh, and she has applied for multiple positions. EDC, I think, was her first choice, but she also did specifically mention the zoning board, which we have a dire need for, so I'm hoping she'll be able to serve that role. Is she in attendance? I didn't see her jump off. All right, Susan, you are in the meeting now. You just need to unmute yourself with that little microphone button down in the lower left-hand corner.
There. Can you
Yeah.
hear me?
Yes, we can.
Can
Welcome.
you see me?
We can even see you too, yes. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for, putting your name out there for us to consider. We did see that you're interested in a variety of offerings. We do have a dire need in the zoning board, so I don't know if you heard my little intro there. Could you speak to your interest in the zoning board in particular?
Well, not recently, but a few years ago, I retired. And like Dan, I'd like to give some service to my town. And by the way, my observation after living around the world, it's a very well-run town. And I don't know whether the town council deserves the credit or the town manager, but I assume it's both. So anyways, so when I retired, my background is administrative management. I worked in local government, state and local government, but in Alabama and South Carolina. I have strong research skills and I am really at your disposal. I had a lot of early experience in economic development, but zoning, I think that's can tend to be controversial, but I suppose the economic development is also controversial. So I would say I'm glad to answer any questions, but I would love to serve where you need me.
Well, zoning board can have a lot of impact on economic development as well, certainly.
Yeah, no, I'm flexible.
And I would say it is a very well-run town. I think credit can go around. A lot of it will also go to the volunteers who serve on all these great boards and commissions that we have. So
I agree.
Takes involvement from people like yourself. Councilwoman Bergner, do you have a question?
I do. I just actually, your resume caught my eye that you were a diplomat for the State Department. Could you just share a little bit more about that experience, just to get to know you a little bit?
Sure. I kind of started late because, I took time off with kids and I did odd jobs in Alabama and South Carolina. But I ended up spending about 25 years overseas. I worked as every aspect. I did visas, I did passports, I did political reporting, not very well, but I ended up my last couple of post embassies in management. And so I ran the embassy, essentially what you all do. I ran motor pool, we had housing, I ran personnel, I had a finance manager, everything that a city has, an embassy has. So that's why I feel I have relatively relevant experience.
Thank you so much. I mean, I didn't expect you were going to give us all that, and it's above and beyond. I feel like you should probably talk to kids at the high school and talk about your life, because it's very different than most people. So I'm excited to find a spot for you.
Well, I just have to say I'm impressed with this area because so many people I've met here and gotten to know have children or have served in the Peace Corps. I do volunteer work with the food bank over in Narragansett, and 3 or 4 of the women have served in the Peace Corps in Africa. And so there's connections here with the world.
Again, thank you. It was wonderful to get this insight.
Councilwoman Kelso, you have a question?
Susan, what brought you here to South Kingstown?
Well, I'm from Jamestown,
Okay.
but not really from Jamestown. My father retired there. He was military. And so my mother lived there for 40, 50 years, same house in Jamestown. So I consider it home. I started elementary school there and I graduated from high school. And then we were gone all over, well, in the middle. So I feel Jamestown really was always my home.
Well, welcome to South Kingstown.
Oh, and my brothers and sisters are here, which is good and bad.
Very good. Well, thank you very much for being willing to serve the town in this fashion. I think we'll have some news for you later on.
I think I see the zoning board in my future. And I'm very happy, very happy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, do I stay on the call or do I leave now?
You can, you can go about your business. We'll inform you, I imagine via email or phone call. If you want to watch the meeting, by all means, you are definitely welcome to. But we understand if you don't stick around.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for your time.
All right. Have a good night.
You're welcome.
All right, Rob, we have 12 minutes to go through the agenda.
All right. I will note that a watcher, a viewer has found Wayne Schaefer. Turns out that Wayne is a haircut model, apparently from California. Somebody cut and paste his image from a website. The times we live in. So the agenda, again, the biggest item or the most complicated item, and probably the one we should spend some time prepping for, is the bond scheduling question. Again, we've got a handful of dates, May 4th, June 8th being the two most likely dates. May 4th, the challenges we face around May 4th are these. In order to get that question to the voters on May 4th, we need approval by the state legislature, preferably on the 15th of March. The state has given us some indication that there's perhaps some room for movement there, but it's days, it's not much. So we're going to have to hold fire until we know exactly what the state General Assembly can do with the legislation. It is pending now. The Senate had it scheduled, I think, for tomorrow, the 9th. And the House is, it's in the Finance Committee in the House. And I know that our delegation has been working with the finance staff to move it along as quickly as possible. But we're a relatively small item and they're dealing with the lottery legislation right now. So it's not the highest priority at the Finance Committee, I'm sure. But if we can get the legislation approved by the 15th, 16th, then the Secretary of State will look at a certified question from our Board of Canvassers, and we will be off to the races. Their Secretary of State and the Board of Elections has got some limits on what they can do in terms of flexibility, and really that second week, the end of that second week is really about as far as we can push it. The 15th, 16th, they really are not happy with, well, here's Susan shaking her head. Please.
We have got to have the question certified by the Board of Canvassers and submitted to the Secretary of State's office by 4 p.m. next Monday, March 15th. They will accept it in anticipation of the general.
Susan, suddenly we can't hear you. I don't know what's happening.
Yeah, we don't know. So Susan, your audio is cut out on you. I'll pick it up. I did have a chance. Susan was on the phone late this afternoon with the Secretary of State and the Board of Elections. She did report to me. And if I get this wrong, Susan, just shake your head and we'll know that we've got to come back to this. They will be able to accept a certified question from us, but only they can only hold it so long. So the state legislature, even if they're not back on the 15th, we only have a matter of days in order to rectify the schedule to get to a March 4th referendum here in town. So then if that is not possible, June 8th becomes the next viable date, again, because it's the first Tuesday after the first Monday of each month. June 8th, it would be the date on which a budget referendum was held. Now, the state has told us that it wouldn't be the first time that town held a double header, one state election and one local election on the same day, but it is logistically difficult. There's challenges around how you flow the voters through the polling place. The poll pads have to be handled specially. There's some complications with having two elections on the same day, one state and one town. They can't be the same ballot. They've got to be two separate ballots. So that's a complicating factor if we go with June 8th. After June 8th, we end up at July 6th, and we're already into the summer, which is not probably the ideal time to be holding a bond referendum. So July, August, and then September, the school superintendent told me today that she has sort of run this to ground with the owner's project manager, and they're very worried that we begin to lose some of the bonus points which expire at the end of 2022 if we were that late into the year before getting an answer to the question, shall we approve the bond? So that's going to be the item on the agenda when we get to scheduling. I guess, any questions now, and then I'm happy to answer questions as we get into this later on too. One other thing to note, we will not have, if we go with a May 4th date, we will not have approval from the state on the application itself. The application itself will not be approved, cannot be approved by the school council, the Council on Education, until May 17th. So one of the things that we had been hoping was that, these elections could be scheduled on any Tuesday in a month. They cannot.
So I did have a quick question about that. There's no flexibility, like, Mike, can the Board of Elections not choose to like wiggle things around here because of the, I don't know, say the coronavirus pandemic or something? I know that last year they were able to sort of play around with timing of elections. They wouldn't have that same ability this year?
They have several towns having elections on May 4th. And I have been told that this is the day that the Board of Elections schedules elections on their calendar for whatever their logistical or legal reasons are, is that first Tuesday after the first Monday of every month. It is doable to have the state election on June 8th, even if we had a petition filed for a bond referendum, but it would involve basically two polling places within each station that the voters would have to check in, get a ballot to vote the state run election, which would be the school bond referendum, and then also go check in perhaps on the other side of the room and get a ballot for a town budget referendum question.
No.
So it's complicated. It is not the ideal situation, but it can be done.
And one other thing to sort of keep in mind is the state, because it's a state election, will mail out ballots. So you can put in a mail application for the bond referendum, and that reduces confusion at the polls, but it doesn't eliminate it.
All right. Yeah, Councilwoman Rose, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, just if you could clarify, it's my understanding that if we wait until that the design process needs to be started by June 1st, or else we're going to start losing.
Yeah.
We're going to start losing the reimbursement. Can you just speak to that quickly?
Yes. So again, I spoke to the superintendent briefly today, and also attended the task force for the communications committee where Sam Bradner was in attendance, being the owner's rep. the guy who set that schedule and came up with that list of dates. There's some movement with that list of dates. They are concerned that if we did not have an answer to the bond question by September, that would certainly be too late. That would certainly be too late. The June 1st start for design can shift a bit. It just can't shift months and months. It just can't shift from June to November. It has to start, not June 1st, but it does have to start fairly.
So if we don't start on June 1st, we don't lose any of the,
No, the issue is actually,
I'm not clear still.
yeah, the issue is actually not the start date. The issue is when that drives your contracting dates and completion dates. So you could start design after June 1st. I can't tell you what the trigger is, but it's contracting. You have a contract in place to do things like have an architect. The deadline for those is the end of the year, 2022. It's not June 1st of 2021. It's just everything pushes everything else. It's not a question of starting too late. It's a question of getting to contracts and getting to completion too late. But everything pushes one to the next.
So I guess my question then would be, what is the repercussion? What do we stand to lose if we push this past a May referendum?
Potentially nothing if you go to June 8th. Potentially nothing if you went to July 6th. After that, I think you're in jeopardy of pushing the timeline too much, and you're in jeopardy of losing some of the bonus points. I think it's 5 bonus points, 5% of the value.
Councilwoman Kelso.
Quickly, can tonight's agenda item be modified to say our first choice is May 4th? If the legislation doesn't come through, then June 8th tonight? Is that possible?
Yes, I think
take care of it tonight, one way or the other.
I think that's exactly the right step. And in fact, we underlined the date on that resolution just to draw your attention to the fact that that is a changeable item. You can change it, and you could add May 4th or the next available, or
my motion would be May 4th, and if that's not possible, then June 8th, not an or, but an if then kind of situation.
Yep, that can be done.
Okay.
Great. I think we've got a good plan of attack here. It is 7:30, so if we can, we are already live streaming, it looks like, and recording. Well, then with that, I'd like to welcome everybody to this meeting of the South Kingstown Town Council. This is our regular session beginning at 7:30. The date is March 8th. It is 7:30, so let us get started. Our first order of business is always the pledge to the flag. This evening, we do have some special guests who are going to help lead us in that. I don't know if we can bring them all in at once. All right, so we have Girl Scouts here to help us lead us in the pledge this evening. Everybody is going to have to go into the town offices to pick up their cookies at some other point. We do appreciate, as always, those cookies and the pledge. How many folks are we bringing in here, just so I don't preempt anybody? Is this everybody? All right, I will assume this is everybody. And we will allow all of you to sort of start at once. I'll give you maybe a countdown on my hand. And when I get to a closed fist, you can start doing the pledge. Does that work? All right.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I understand somebody wanted to lead us in the pledge in Spanish. Is that correct?
Raise your hand. Go ahead.
Yo prometo lealtad a la bandera de los Estados Unidos de América y a la república que representa una nación ante Dios indivisible, con libertad y justicia para todos.
Well, thank you all so much. And it's always a pleasure to have you into the council chambers. Maybe next year we can get you back in person. But thank you all. And thank you for, participating in Girl Scouts, such a great organization. Very happy to have you. All right. And with that, I think we will continue on with the agenda. Item 3 is the roll call.
All right. Council President Collins,
Here.
Council Vice President McEntee,
Here.
Councilwoman Bergner,
Here.
Councilwoman Kelso,
Here.
Councilwoman Rose.
Here.
All members are present. Ava, are you going to bring forward the proclamation for the Girl Scouts while they're here?
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, I can.
Okay.
So item 11A will bring forward. Do I hear a motion to approve?
Rory McEntee, I'll make a motion to approve 11A.
Jess Rose, I'll second.
All right, and I'll just read this for the record. This resolution states Girl Scout Week, March 7th through March 13th, 2021. Whereas Friday, March 12th, 2021 marks the 109th anniversary of Girl Scouts of the USA, founded by Low in 1912 in Savannah, Georgia. And whereas through Girl Scouting, girls grow in courage, confidence, and character, and learn to make the world a better place. And whereas throughout its long and distinguished history, Girl Scouts, the preeminent organization for girls, has inspired millions of girls and women with the highest ideals of character, conduct, and patriotism. And whereas Girl Scouting takes an active role in increasing the interest and skill levels of today's youth in math, science, and technology careers, and to fulfill our country's economic needs. And whereas through participation in Project Undercover, a council-wide community service project, every girl will learn that she can make a change for the better in her community. And whereas the Girl Scout cookie sale is the world's largest girl-led business, teaching financial literacy to girls of all ages. Whereas the Girl Scouts of Southeastern New England, which serves 4,800 girls in the Rhode Island area, will be celebrating 109 years of an American tradition, with more than 2.5 million current Girl Scout members nationwide. Now, therefore, we, the Town Council of the Town of South Kingstown, do hereby proclaim the week of March 7th through 13th, 2021 as Girl Scout Week in the Town of South Kingstown, and urge our citizens to support Girl Scouts in their endeavors. Very good. We have a motion, we have a second. Any further conversation? Is there anyone opposed? Oh, Councilwoman Berger.
I just wanted to recognize the Spanish speakers who probably participate in our wonderful DLI program and commend the teachers that help our Girl Scouts be so proficient in Spanish. I am making an assumption that they're not native speakers, but just wanted to recognize if they are members of the DLI program to say thank you to all of them and their teachers.
Good. All right. Any further conversation? Is there anyone opposed to this motion? That motion carries unanimously. And That brings us to item 4 on the agenda, the approval of minutes of previous meetings.
Rory McEntee, I'll make a motion to approve 4A, B, and C.
Deb Kelso, second.
We have a motion from Councilman McEntee, second from Councilwoman Kelso. Any discussion? Is there anyone opposed? That motion carries unanimously. And that brings us to the consent agenda.
Rory McEntee, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Deb
Just
Kelso, second.
Motion to approve from Councilman McEntee, second from Councilwoman Kelso. Discussion? Councilwoman Bergner?
Yeah, there was one item, the item from the South Kingstown Housing Authority from Laura Lee Costello that I just wanted to pull just so that we could talk about it.
We can, Mike, we can pull that off of, after we pass the consent agenda, we can make a motion to pull that off.
Yeah, actually, what you want to do is have a motion to approve the consent agenda except for that item.
All right, so we would need a motion to amend the current.
Just approve the consent agenda except for that item.
So I'll
And then you can vote on that separately after discussion.
So I will amend my motion entirely, and I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of item 7B.
All right, do I hear a second for that?
I'll second. Jess Rose, second.
Motion from Councilman McEntee, second from Councilwoman Rose. Any discussion? Is there anyone opposed? All right, that motion carries. And Councilwoman Bergner, at this point, did you want to add something to the agenda, or was that it?
No,
You should probably go to the item that you left off the consent agenda next.
Okay.
Well, I mean, if you recall our conversation from the work session, I think Councilwoman Bergner had another item potentially, or was that it? That was my question.
It's another item.
Okay, if you want to add that item to the agenda now, we could have that motion.
Yeah, so sorry, just wanted to ask that we add an agenda item to the meeting, that we schedule a special meeting with the council so that we can meet in closed executive session with matters related to personnel so that we can have a better understanding of some things. Could we add that to the agenda?
So Mike, you need to help me. If we were to add a closed executive session, can that be done tonight?
I don't think you, no, I don't think you could do it tonight. I think what Councilor Bergner is asking is whether or not you can talk about scheduling a closed executive session at a future point involving personnel. Do I have that right?
Yeah, sorry, I wrote it down, but it's not correct. But yes, I want to talk about scheduling a special session.
You can do that if the council desires, yes.
All right, so I think that's a motion, correct? So, okay, but do I hear a second?
Just, I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second. Discussion? I mean, so I think perhaps for the rest of the council to vote I mean, would just be to have that discussion.
Just scheduling a meeting is all it would be.
And is there discussion on this motion?
Is there a particular date or time?
I think we would have to have that discussion once we get to the agenda item.
Correct.
Councilwoman Kelso.
Mike, can we vote on an item we added to the agenda?
Yeah, so in other words, when there's not something on the agenda, you can
Right.
always vote to add an item to the agenda for discussion purposes. And specifically with regard to scheduling, there's actually an Open Meetings Act exception that says you are allowed, in fact, to discuss something not on the agenda with regard to scheduling a meeting. You can't get into the substance of it, but you can, if you desire. I mean, the council would have to decide that that's something they want to do, which is to have such a meeting.
Right.
If that makes some
I guess
sense.
I was confused. I didn't think, I mean, we could discuss tonight whether we want to have a meeting, but I didn't think we could vote on that to have the meeting.
Yeah, you can do both only because it's
Okay.
scheduling a meeting. If it were anything other than scheduling, you could not.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so we have a motion, we have second. Folks feel ready to vote? Want to have more discussion? All right, let's call the roll.
Quickly, before we vote, Mike, I'd just like to clarify, the vote that we're voting on is to talk about the possibility of having a meeting. We're not voting on anything other than that?
That is correct. You are not voting to have the meeting. All you're voting on is adding this item to the agenda. You're not deciding whether the meeting will take place or not. That will come later. I know it's confusing. I'm sorry.
All right, any further comments or questions about this? All right, then I think we'll call the roll.
Councilwoman Bergner,
Aye.
Councilwoman Kelso,
Aye.
Councilman McEntee,
Aye.
Councilwoman Rose,
Aye.
Councilman Collins,
Aye.
all in favor.
So now we've added that agenda item. Would we just take that up immediately? Or can we just get to that whenever we want to?
It doesn't matter when you get to it on the agenda. You could put it at the end of the agenda, or you could take it up right now. It's up to you all.
Let's wait for a little while. We've had enough confusing things for the present moment, I feel. Let's go to item, we took an item off the consent agenda. What was that item? Okay.
The housing authority.
Abel, if I may, you have 2 new licenses that we have applicants here
Yeah.
for.
Okay, let's do that. Item 6, licenses. 6A, a resolution granting a miscellaneous permit to conduct a portion of the Bike MS ride in the road in South Kingstown on Saturday, June 12th, 2021, to National MS Society of Waltham, Mass, subject to the execution of a hold harmless agreement indemnifying the town, issuance of a certificate of insurance, naming the town as an additional insured for the event in the amount specified by the finance director, and approval for by RIDOT, and the application is by Emily Rivera. Emily,
Yes,
you're here.
I am here. Hi, how are you?
Very good. Tell us about the Ride the Road.
So this was actually supposed to be our 34th year. However, we were unable to hold it last year due to the pandemic. So it will technically be our 33rd year holding Bike MS Ride the Road. Traditionally, it is a 2-day ride out of the University of Rhode Island. However, we will be doing 1 day this year as part of our COVID-19 precautions. So we will be holding only a 75 and 40-mile route out of the school. Traditionally, we usually always have a 100-mile route option as well, but it's our hope to limit our kind of our footprint throughout the state and our time as well. We are expecting at most 225 people. Likelihood of getting up to that may not be what we think. It might be more about 150. We are looking at a tentative revenue budget of $191,000, which is still pretty strong, but it's down from our $350,000 that we typically try to raise for MS through this event. We are doing a larger start window this year by about a half hour. Traditionally, we do a what we call a hard start, which is everyone lines up at 7:30 out of the school and we proceed on to the route. However, we are looking to do between 7 and about 8:30 in the morning, and we are going to ask that people show up and be assigned wave times, and no more than 50 people in a wave, and they can only show up 30 minutes before their assigned wave time to limit the contact. We will also, everything will be single served. We won't be having any ceremonies, no tenting beyond one just for the use of kind of a customer service tent. The idea is that there will be no day of registration. There will be contactless bib pickup, and we will be doing temperature checks and a screening 24 hours prior that they must bring to even access the event. Along with, attached is a contingency plan and our COVID external communication plan for all participants, volunteers, and vendors. So that's pretty much the event this year in a nutshell. It's very watered down, but we're still hoping to have something to bring people together in a way that's safe.
There I am muted myself. All right, so thank you for bringing this to us, and definitely a worthy cause. Any questions, comments from other council members? If someone were bound and determined to be one of those like 200, 225 people participating, how would they go about getting involved in?
They can go to our website directly, which is msnewengland.org, and it'll list all of the events, whether it's going to be a virtual event like our walks right now, or you can choose one of our 5 bike rides we're hoping to hold. So you can go there and you may register, and it'll provide all the information that you would need, or feel free to contact me directly.
Great. All right, do I hear a motion?
Rory McEntee, I'll make a motion to approve 6A.
Deb Bergner, second.
We have a motion from Councilman McEntee, second from Councilman Bergner. Any discussion? Is there anyone opposed? All right, that motion carries unanimously. Best of luck, Emily.
Thank you.
Have a good night. 6B is a resolution granting victualling and holiday sales licenses to Sumo Sushi of 99 Fortin Road in Kingston. This is subject to the Rhode Island Department of Health approval, application by James Towers. Looks like we have somebody here to speak on this one. Lori. All right, Lori, you are unmuted. Can you hear us? We cannot hear you at the moment if you are speaking. Lori, you may need to try fiddling with your audio settings on Zoom. Now we can see you. Can you try speaking to us, Lori? You just muted yourself, I believe. Try hitting that microphone button one more time. You are currently muted. Do you see that little microphone button down in the lower left-hand corner of the Zoom screen there? Okay, now you should be able to talk. Let's see if that works. Might be dealing with a slow connection here. So one thing you can try, Lori, is turning off the video. Sometimes that eats up a lot of bandwidth and prevents the connection from working well.
We also have the option of her calling in by phone, Abel, of course.
So Lori, if maybe try to
I
turn
don't
off.
seem to be through.
Yeah, Lori, I think you're if you turn off your video function. I recommend trying to turn off your video function if you can hear me. And then see if you can speak now and if we can get the audio through.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
You not see me?
This is, yeah, we can go through this without necessarily needing to see you. So if you wouldn't mind just telling us a little bit about Sumo Sushi.
Sushi is going to be takeout restaurant, takeout sushi. There is individual, so I'm just here representing. He's already had a restaurant in South Kingston called Crazy Fusion that's already doing sushi. This is a second location. They're going to be only doing takeout sushi rolls.
Okay.
Excuse me, it's just really bad for me. I don't know if it's my connection or I got that they're doing takeout sushi rolls and it's his second location. That's all the facts I got.
Yes, I think your connection is just about what everybody else is experiencing as well. Lori.
I apologize. I'm in local and we have internet out here.
Yeah. If you could just, maybe we can get the audio through. So what are your proposed hours, if you don't mind?
The hours, I believe it's 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. And I think it starts at noon on the weekend.
Okay, folks, what would you like to do here? We can ask her to call in, see if that would work. Or we could, I mean, we could sort of go off of what we've heard as well. I don't know how people feel about that or not. Councilwoman Bergner?
I don't want to, unless there's a set of standard questions you have to answer, it sounds, I get a good sense of what they're offering. You know, we don't need to put this person and the people through a lot. We just do what we need to do. That's my mindset, because she's really hard to hear. Every other word's hard to figure out.
I understand that. Any other comments now? Do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve item 6B. Vic, can I do that?
You can. Deb, I think you, or Councilwoman Kelso, you muted yourself, I think, when you made that second.
Second.
All right. We have a motion to approve the second from Councilwoman Kelso. Discussion? All right. Is there anyone opposed? All right. That motion carries unanimously. Lori, sorry for the technical difficulties. Best of luck with Sumo Sushi. and look forward to trying it.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us to item 7, communications. 7A is a resolution adopted February 17th, 2021 by the Coventry Town Council proposing an amendment to Rhode Island General Laws 44-5-2, levy and assessment of taxes, minimum levy to add Section D5 relative to computation of the 4% municipal tax levy cap. That's been received. What do we want to do with it?
Deb Kelso, motion to place 7A on file.
Rory McEntee, second.
Right, we have a motion from Councilwoman Kelso, a second from Councilman McEntee. Any discussion on this item? Is there anyone opposed? Right, that motion carries unanimously. 7B is an email dated February 23rd, 2021 from Laura Lee Costello, Executive Director, providing an update on the South Kingstown Housing Authority's laundry development project. Councilwoman Bergner, your hand is up.
Yeah, I just had it taken off the consent agenda because if you read the memo, it's just really sad that they had original drawings, they didn't include the right mechanicals, now they're going back out. Is there anything we can do as the town to help them? I mean, we have expert staff to sort of, this project is years going on. They don't have any laundry facility, you know. It just is heartbreaking to me that we can't advance this. We hear about it from community leaders and stakeholders. Is there anything we can do to help move this project along?
So let me say we have done an awful lot. The grant application was one that was produced by town staff in cooperation with Housing Authority personnel. We have, worked with them to ensure compliance. We've served as a sort of agent going between them and the state agency that oversees the grant. We don't have and haven't had anyone who could manage the project as a project manager. And really, on some level, the Housing Authority has to be responsible for their project. It's their property. It's their project. I'm happy to reach out to the Housing Authority and see what help we can provide, but ultimately they have to manage their project.
I know. It's just very difficult to understand. I understand why it's taken so long, but it's really unbelievable that citizens would have to. I mean, we hear from their leaders, from stakeholders that this is a problem, and yet, if you read this, it's just sad. The drawings previously submitted by John Hoyle do not include mechanical, electrical, or plumbing plans. And so, and now they're just struggling. And I know it's not our responsibility, but they live in our community. There are people. So,
it's not even, it's not, the challenge isn't so much that it's not our responsibility. We could, I suppose, take on responsibility, but we don't have all of the information from the housing. I mean, we're not the Housing Authority. So to act as the Housing Authority is difficult because we just don't stand in their shoes. We don't have the building, and I don't even know what the latest design of this is, but they were going to convert a portion of an existing building. It's their building. We don't know the building the way they know it. We don't have control over the building the way they have control over the building. We can't go in, on a Friday afternoon and just, take measurements as they can. It's not easy for us to step into the shoes of anyone. I mean, if we were talking about doing a project for, I don't know, a nonprofit organization somewhere else in town, we just don't, it's not us. It's not the same as doing a project on town property. We don't have the same custody. We don't have the same control over the project elements. So, without control over all of the project elements, it's hard to manage a project.
I know, but I mean, we have other staff, I mean, the director of, there's no one who can even just provide expert guidance, help to me, I don't know why we can't help them. In some situations, we subvert process, we've worked around rules. And in this situation, we can't cross the line to help people in our own community who don't have a laundry. I don't know. I don't know.
I'm happy to reach back out to the Housing Authority and ask them how they think we can help and go from there.
Maybe they're right. Maybe I'm curious why she would update you if we have no role in the project. Not a role, but like, they're just surprising us to say we're still having difficulties. I just want to help them bring this project forward.
Yep. I understand. I appreciate the sentiment. We've been trying to work with them for, a couple of years now on this project. Again, the funding when we got it was, something we celebrated 2 years ago. The series of unfortunate events that have kept them from, bringing the project to fruition were beyond our control. They were largely beyond their control, I suppose. I can certainly reach out to the Housing Authority and ask them how we might be of assistance. I'm not sure that the way for us to help most is for us to, step in and say, we're in charge now and, get out of our way and let us do your project. But I'll have the conversation with the Housing Authority Director and see what she thinks we can do.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Kelso, your hands up.
Yeah, Rob, so can we ask Laura Lee to come maybe to the next meeting and update us?
You'll remember they have asked to come and have a work session with the council. We're trying to schedule that. So this may be a separate
on this issue, perhaps we could just
Sure.
bring Laura Lee and
Yep.
let her tell us, what's
Happy to do
going on.
that.
I understand she's fairly new to the position, so.
She is.
Yeah, so anyway, that would be my preference.
Okay.
All right, do I hear a motion on 7B?
Motion to accept item 7B.
So I'll second that, but with maybe a caveat, and direct the town manager to reach out to the director and update us, give us an update on the laundry facility.
So is that your motion, Councilman Bergner?
Absolutely.
Okay. We have a motion from Councilman Bergner, second from Councilwoman Kelso. Any discussion on this one? All right, anyone opposed? That motion carries unanimously. 7C is a resolution adopted February 23rd, 2021 by the South Kingstown School Committee seeking reclassification of public school staff to make them eligible to receive COVID-19 vaccinations immediately. What would we like to do with this one? Do we need to take this action as well for them to be reclassified, or is this something that they did and the reclassification has already happened?
So we're expecting an announcement from the state tomorrow on point. I would suggest that this matter is going to be driven largely by state policy. So I don't want to announce something that the state's going to do because they've asked us not to announce it, but this will be taken care of.
Councilwoman Rose, what is that?
I believe at this point, all K through 12 school employees are eligible for vaccine. Doesn't matter if you're a custodian or if you're a teacher or a teaching assistant. If you work in a K-12 school, in childcare, in the state of Rhode Island, you are eligible to receive a vaccine as of last week.
It may be. Okay. Good.
So perhaps this item is a moot point in many ways, but we can pass it or not, whichever way we want to go with it.
Rory McEntee, I'll make a motion to approve 7C.
Deb Bergner, second.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilman McEntee, second from Councilman Bergner. Any further discussion? there anyone opposed? All right, that motion carries unanimously. 7D is a resolution adopted February 24th, 2021 by the Burrillville Town Council concerning maintenance of operations at the Zambarano unit of Eleanor Slater Hospital. You've received that. What would we like to do with that?
Deb Bergner, motion to accept item 7D and place it on file.
Jess Rose, I'll second.
Motion from Councilman Bergner, second from Councilman Rose. Any discussion? Is there anyone opposed? All right, that motion carries unanimously. That brings us to 7G, an email dated March 3rd, 2021 from Tara Apperson concerning references to the school department and the budget message section of the FY 2021-2022 town manager's proposed budget that has been received. What would you like to do with that? Or I suppose, is Tara in the audience as a question? I see that she is not. Okay, what would you like to do with this letter?
I'm sure the topic will come up at Wednesday's joint meeting with the school committee. So I'll just make a motion to defer any decision on this and direct Rob to address any questions that may come in at Wednesday's meeting.
Jess Rose, I'll second that.
Motion from Councilman McAtee, second from Councilman Rose. Any discussion? Is there anyone opposed? All right, that motion carries unanimously. That brings us to item 8, comments from interested citizens. If you are, we have one, yes. I will call on folks in the order that they raise their hands. If you are on your phone, you can hit *9 to raise your hands, and then you would hit *6 to unmute yourself. Our first hand tonight is Jocelyn Leska.
Hi all, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Good evening. I'm here probably with more of a comment, but a very heartfelt thought behind it. I'm assuming you're all aware of a proposed condo development on Holden Road in Matunic that has been the source of a great deal of controversy for the residents in Matunic. I own a home very near there. It is a secondary home, but it is a piece of property that's been in my family for generations. So I'm quite familiar with Matunic and have spent a lot of my life there. The issue that I bring to you tonight is the fact that we don't have a valid filed comprehensive plan and affordable housing plan. And because of that, you have, by not doing so, you have hampered your planning department in that they don't have regulatory language to defend a denial on. And the attorney for the board was very clear that no matter how upset the citizens are, no matter what damages occur to them or may occur to them, for what everyone agrees is a pretty bad project. Where's the comprehensive plan? This is my 4th appearance before the town council regarding the need for a strong, vibrant, valid, comprehensive plan and affordable housing plan. A lot of people are going to get hurt by this. Their property lines, long established through generations, are now become a contentious issue with the builder. There's great ecological impact by a shameless use of the affordable housing law to push through an incredibly, just a foolish density, but nobody has any legs to deny this. And I think that you need to recognize that the comprehensive plan expired at the state level in 2017. A draft came out on the 2019 was reviewed, comments were made, never came back to you. It never came back. So I wanted to get that on the table. I wanted to let you know that people are very sad. It goes beyond, oh, I don't want that in my backyard, or I don't want three-story condominiums overlooking Mary Carpenter's. They're sad. The village has a very, very special vibe. It's very protected in our comprehensive plan. I have family that comes back year after year after year, and I have rentals that come back year after year, and they've made friends down at Mary Carpenter's. They go down for the bonfires, and they go down for ice cream at the Vanilla Bean and walk over and relax with friends that they've made over the years. So a lot of people are sad. They're just sad. We thought we had a comprehensive plan that protected the uniqueness of the villages, and it failed us because it's not valid. So I appreciate your time. I appreciate you listening. And I need to let you know, you need to get the comprehensive plan in front of you. You need to get it reviewed. You need to have another public hearing because there's been edits and comments and changes. And then you need to get this thing in place because people expect it. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Jocelyn. Next, we have Greg Sweet. Councilwoman Bergner will take community comment first. All right, Greg, you just need to unmute yourself.
Okay. Hi, my name's Greg Sweet. I'm not sure if I understood this right. Rob said earlier, I believe, that if the bond vote was pushed off to June or July, it really would not have any negative effect on, I guess, the 15%. Is that correct?
So I wouldn't say that it has no negative effect. It tightens the timeline within which things have to be done. But the indication I got today was that June would not be fatal to the timeline. The further you go out, the more detriment you do to the schedule, and the more likely you are to miss bonus points.
Okay. And to push it out to June, I understand it could be cumbersome because you have to have 2 ballots, and it sounds like it's technically challenging. But if you have it in on the May 4th, RIDE hasn't even given the approval yet. So it kind of, to me, it doesn't make any sense to vote on this when we don't have an answer from them, and especially if June's not really going to cause any technical problems to the 15%.
So I would just suggest this one piece of information is important, and that is that the school building authority actually does make a preliminary recommendation, and the school department does expect that recommendation from the school building authority in March or early April. What won't happen until May 17th is the Council on Education's final approval.
And that's what we would go by, though, right? The final approval, not preliminary.
Yeah. You're not going to be able to get the authority without the Council on Education's, you're not going to get the reimbursement without the Council on Education's approval of the project. When I asked this question of the consultants who do this work for the school district, have you ever seen a recommendation, an affirmative, a positive recommendation from the school building authority denied by the Council on Education? Their answer was no. They've never seen that.
Given what the whole world's been going through the last year, crap happens, that's for sure. All right, it just, for me, it just doesn't make any sense to push it before we get the authorized approval. I'm just throwing that out there anyways for clarification. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Next up, we have Clifford Dutrumble. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Please correct me if I was wrong. You were brought into the meeting. All right, Clifford, you just need to unmute yourself. And to do that, there's a little microphone icon down in lower left-hand corner of the Zoom screen. You may see it. There you go.
There we go. I think that's it.
You got it.
Can you hear me? Okay. I'm going to restrict my comments just to this community plan that Jocelyn brought up. If you look at your email today, I sent an email on this condo plan to you guys. I really would like you to look at this. I'm not going to go into detail about it. It's horrendous. If you don't know what's going on with this, please look into it. It's almost as if the builders are railroading the town planning personnel because of this community plan. And I just can't get it through my head. How does the community plan trump zoning regulations and other stipulations for stressed property and water areas and so forth, the environmental concerns? How does that allow the lack of a community plan allow the builders to badger the town planners by proposing all kinds of variances to intensify the building density of the property, to reduce the space between buildings, to put in permeable roadways so everything's going to soak into there from the cars and the lawn chemicals and so forth. They're also been told that, of course, they need a denitrification septic system because they're in such a vulnerable area. But you'll see in my emails, the information on denitrification septic systems are very poor as far as being able to totally say, you put that system in and you're not going to have any contamination problems. But back on the thing of the plan, does anybody there on the board here know, on the town council, is the community plan so essential, so important that it trumps all of the zoning regulations and common sense when it comes to making waivers to violate zoning regulations at the cost of, they're just hiding behind the low, medium income stipulations that allow them to do all this stuff? I mean, what is the real story here with this community plan?
Yeah, I appreciate the question, Clifford. One thing is council does not get involved in matters before our boards and commissions. We don't want to prejudice them. I will let our solicitor, Mike Ursillo, answer that. I think there are some provisions about the affordable housing laws in Rhode Island that bear on certain.
So what I wanted to say, Abel, is that we are in public comment here. This is not an agenda item. We would have to make an agenda item. You are correct in saying that I'm going to counsel the council not to make any comments whatsoever on any application before any of its boards. That's just not allowed. All of those comments can certainly be made at the planning board, or if it's a zoning board hearing, etc. The comprehensive permit process is driven by state law, that the town is bound by it. It's really up to the planning board to make the decision as to whether or not that project conforms to the requirements, if it meets the comprehensive plan requirements, etc. But you certainly can hear what citizens want to tell you about their views on this, but you're really not able to respond. I'm sorry. It has to be done at the board level, Abel, just as you said up front.
Thank you, Mike. Were there further public comments? Anybody listening?
Could I just make one more comment? Do I understand this properly, that the zoning department could stand on its own and rely on the building regulations and making our own sensible decisions and, you know, based on evidence of whether we should allow these waivers and so forth, or, I mean, or do they, without a comprehensive plan being approved? I mean, do they have anything to stand on? I'm being told no, but I can't believe that.
The comprehensive permit process all goes through the planning board. It's the planning board which is statutorily empowered to make those decisions.
So is it the planning board that has to submit the community plan to someone for approval, or how does that work?
So, okay, so the comprehensive community plan, of course, is a document that is different in a part of a comprehensive permit. Sorry for the use of the same terms over and over again.
I understand the difference, yes.
But the comprehensive community plan, and I don't know if later in the meeting that's going to be addressed as to when that's coming back before the council.
So I will address this during the manager's report. We may be able to get Jamie Rabbit to come in to provide some general description of the relationship between the comprehensive plan, comprehensive permits, and affordable housing. I will note right here, just as sort of foreshadowing on that, the fact that the comprehensive plan is not what's driving the comprehensive permit. The comprehensive permit is driven by the number of affordable units in town and it not being a sufficient number. That's what the state statute pegs off of.
Right. The permit, though, enables them, if they have a comprehensive permit, it allows them to seek waivers. And for instance, I believe the building density would probably be of that property would be normally about 4, maybe 2 to 4 units or something, because a lot of it's wetland and all that stuff. And they want to put 12. I mean, come on. Can the town just say, hey, wait a minute, that's too much. We got, I'm being told by the people in the community, and I don't know this to be a fact, but this is what I'm hearing, is that the council cannot reject it. They have to accept it. Only if the comprehensive plan had something in there that they're violating, then you can reject it. And when it gets appealed, it goes to, I guess, the housing authority or something, and they look at, hey, you don't have a plan? Forget about it. The guy's permit is approved. I don't want to belabor it, but that's all I'm going to say. Thanks.
Thank you, Clifford. Right. Is there anybody else from the public who would like to make a comment on any topic? All right, Councilwoman Bergner.
Thank you. I think I would like to add to the agenda a conversation about not the Matunic condos project, but about the process of the comprehensive plan, because what I'm hearing from the community is that we don't have a comprehensive plan. We were told it wasn't a problem. We asked about it. This is we, the collective, not me, the council. The community asked, where is the plan? They were assured it wasn't a problem. And now what is happening in this project, the lawyers are now saying it is a problem because we don't have we can't defend against a comprehensive permit because we don't have the plan in place. So I would like to try to add that so we can understand the process, because that's what I heard from for a person from Jocelyn Leska, that there's that is the driving for, like, there's no defense. No? You shaking your head no? Okay. Can we add it to the agenda to understand the process?
My suggestion is that under the manager's report, this is going to be touched upon. Jamie will be coming in. Maybe we can get a little more clarity between he and I. As long as it's brought up in the manager's report, we can discuss it.
Okay. I just want to make sure that people who are talking about it, I don't care how it comes out. They're just talking about it. I don't want them to hang up and move on, and then we're going to talk about it in 20 minutes. So.
Well, we should be able to get to that town manager's report very quickly now. Let me see. Are any other comments from council members? Seeing none. Rob, town manager report.
So Susan, if you can bring Jamie in, we will bring this right to the front. I do understand the questions that have been raised here, and I think it would be helpful for us to describe for the council and for the public the relationship between comprehensive permits, the comprehensive plan, and the state's Affordable Housing Act. So what drives a comprehensive permit is the State Affordable Housing Act. The gravamen of the act is whether or not a community has a sufficient number of affordable housing units constructed. In South Kingstown, we have about 5.6% of our housing stock, year-round housing stock, is an affordable unit or are affordable units. We need to be at 10% affordable units in order to avoid the application of the provision of the Affordable Housing Act that allows a developer to come in and put in a comprehensive permit application to the state and get the waivers from local zoning regulations or local planning regulations. So the relationship is tight between the Affordable Housing Statute and the comprehensive permit. The relationship between the comprehensive permit and the comprehensive plan is nowhere near as tight as the relationship between the statute and the permit. And I'm going to let Jamie describe the relationship between the comprehensive plan and the comprehensive permitting process. Not speaking to any.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Just to cover what Rob has said is that the primary driving factor is the fact that the town of South Kingston has not met the 10% goal set by the state. And as such, you're subject to the comprehensive permit process, which allows a developer to ask for certain waivers that would not be attributable to a normal application outside of the comprehensive permit, devoid of whether you have a current comprehensive community plan or a slightly expired comprehensive community plan. Again, the driving factor is the 10% criteria contained within the state law, which gives an applicant the ability to apply to for an alternative to what the zoning code would typically allow. In this instance, the applicant has applied for 12 units, 6 buildings with a duplex in each building for a total of 12 units. The commission
I want to caution, Jamie,
at the
avoid this
conceptual
application.
master plan. Yeah, I have to be careful because again, the comprehensive permit process in essence is 3 steps. You have comprehensive design, then you have preliminary, and then you have final. The regulations call out certain aspects to every portion of the application. The applicant is required to submit certain things at certain steps. And it's in the first step, comprehensive master plan, the applicant is not required to do full-blown site plans. And that's true for a comprehensive permit or a normal development. So again, there are different criteria at the different steps, which the planning board has to evaluate. Again, whether it's a comprehensive permit or a normal permit. Again, to Rob's point, your hands aren't tied. Rob, I'm not sure if I just lost everybody.
Yeah, we lost your audio for a second.
Okay, I lost video on everybody. But again, to Rob's point, and we do have counsel here, on applications for comprehensive permit, it's really tied to the 10% factor in state law and the criteria is weighed on a development by development standard as it relates to community impact associated with environmental and storm drainage. It's not in essence, whether a community likes or doesn't like the style and density of the unit. It's what impacts actually cause harm to either to the environment or to the general area. And that has to be quantifiable. They're not qualitative, they're quantifiable. So if the development actually causes storm drainage issues and that is quantifiable, then the Planning Commission can look at those. If the applicant submits evidence that it is quantifiable but doesn't cause harm, then the Planning Board has to balance that. So again, it's not that you don't have a comprehensive community plan that's in effect. It's the fact that you don't meet the 10% criteria. And I've also been advised that once you meet the 10% criteria, it doesn't exempt a developer from applying. It just perhaps changes the burden slightly, because if under appeal, if it went to the State Housing Board, that you would argue that you've met the goals of the state set at 10% and you've met those objectives, and that this causes irreparable harm to the community beyond requiring affordable housing, which you met the goal for. But again, to Rob's point, you're almost 4.5 percentage points away, which in South Kingston is over 400 units. It's a long way from the 10% criteria. And you started at a deficit because the state established 10% when you really were only at about 1.5%. So you're constantly chasing that number. So again, Mike, I know council's listening, and
Jamie, I think you've done a great job describing what the relationship is between the state requirements with regard to meeting the 10% goal for affordable housing and giving the developers and applicants the ability to increase density, et cetera, whenever they find a lot somewhere in town. You know, the comprehensive plan, my understanding, and Jamie, correct me if I'm wrong, the affordable housing section edits to that plan, they're tweaks, they're not substantive. They're not, in other words, ultimately, and I assume we'll get to this discussion, when the council approves the new comprehensive plan, those edits to the affordable housing section aren't going to have an impact on how developers can apply for comprehensive permits. They're just minor tweaks.
The revisions proposed and rewrite for 2021 are in line with the existing housing section that is in the expired community plan. It's not an overhaul. It's not a significant upgrade or substantial change. It's mirroring the goals and objectives that have been in the plan for some time.
And Jamie and Mike, you might be able to shed more light on this, but there is a relationship between the comprehensive plan and state projects. So if the state is going to construct a project in the town of South Kingstown, it needs to consider the comprehensive plan in its development plans. But that's not necessarily true for a comprehensive permittee. A private developer who is coming in under a comprehensive permit isn't obliged to look at the comprehensive plan, isn't bound by the comprehensive plan in the same way that the state is if it's doing a project. That's really the biggest benefit of a comprehensive plan in terms of managing development from an entity outside of the town, right?
Yeah, to Rob's point, the nature of the comprehensive permit actually allows the developer to work slightly outside of the lines of the comprehensive community plan, which supports the zoning ordinance. Where they, you know, if they're proposing a density of 10,000 square feet for a property in a zone that requires R40, instantly they're not in compliance with the comprehensive community plan because it calls out zoning for 40,000 square feet for a building lot. And the comprehensive permit process actually allows them by law to initiate that process. And the mere nature of the comprehensive permit process puts them at odds with what the existing zoning is and statements included in the comprehensive community plan. But the state found the need and determined through legislation that if you're not at 10%, a comprehensive permit is a viable option for a developer. Since I've been here in September, we're on our second application, and we've also worked with 2 other developers who are doing incentive zoning, but they're also on the cusp of swapping those out for a comprehensive permit because it gives them potentially more flexibility under zoning.
Thank you for that clarification. Just to take it to an extreme for folks, if, say our comprehensive plan update, we just put in language that said, we don't find that comprehensive permits are in keeping with the character of South Kingstown. That's our new finding. If we put that in the comp plan, they would still be able to go to the
Absolutely able. They would be able to apply because they don't need to be consistent with the comprehensive community plan. The law allows them to apply beyond that statement. No new affordable housing, take it to further, South Kingston feels you have sufficient affordable housing. And I know you've of the opinion you perhaps don't. Therefore, comprehensive permit applications are not allowed. That would be in violation of state law, in my opinion.
Another way to sort of, I think we've got the point out there, but another way to put this is this: the comprehensive plan is not an ordinance, and it is not a statute, and a state statute trumps it. So it's adopted by the town council. And Mike, I want to, in Rhode Island, is it adopted as an ordinance? The comp plan?
Is the comp plan itself an ordinance?
Yes.
Yeah, I believe it is. We go through an adoption process.
And it's adopted as an ordinance? That's an odd, it's worth checking. I'll check.
Jamie?
I'll give guidance to that. Once the comprehensive plan, and we'll move the discussion of comprehensive permit. Once the comprehensive community plan is adopted, it is the objective and requirement that the planning board bring the zoning code into compliance with the comprehensive plan. So if the comprehensive plan made a statement to rezone a particular area of town from R30 to R40, it would be the planning board's, in essence, obligation to do a zone change to bring a section of town into compliance and rezone it from R30 to R40.
You're good. That was well done. But that's a very good way of thinking about it. It's an ordinance that applies to the government. It doesn't apply to developers. That's a good point. Well done.
Councilwoman Bergner.
So first of all, thanks for talking about this. It's really important. It's important to me, and it's obviously important to the community. A couple of things. One is, I think the community heard that the fact that we didn't have a current plan was a problem. So that's why I think people are coming forward and saying, we don't have a comprehensive plan. It was said at the planning board meetings that was a problem. So that's what they're hanging on to, I think. That's my understanding. Hold on. And then I think that we need to have a work session with planning. We need to talk about this. There have to be some changes made. I know we have a very responsive General Assembly delegation. We need to suggest the appropriate legislation. We need to start to try to work a few changes, because there are we do have some changes to be made, because the law, they're setting the density at master plan, and that can't be changed. And so you see a few bumps in the road that based on lots of projects. So we need to have a work session with planning. We probably need to meet with the legislative delegation to think about what from from that meeting, we're going to put up forward to the state. There needs to be some changes. But also, I wanted to bring this up because the community, we need to understand what the next steps are. I have the comprehensive plan in a binder at my feet, but what are the next steps, and how quickly do you think we're going to adopt it? I know it's not going to change projects in the pipeline, but I want to try to get ahead of this because it's creating a lot of angst, and the community, there's some misunderstanding on their part. I know I have some misunderstanding, but we need to have a plan to move this forward. I think it's hard for the community to understand that it's taken 4 years if there's only small tweaks. I mean, think about some of the little sound bites. It's not meant to be a gotcha. It's people are just trying to understand. It's 4 years in the making, but yet there's only a few tweaks. It's really not a problem, but yet it's a problem. It's really hard. So we need to do better for the community, because when these comprehensive permits come up, they're not cookie cutter. They're not easy. And so some of the projects have hundreds of people talking about them, upset, writing to us. And I get it. We're not the planning board. That's going to come through them, but we are responsible for the comprehensive plan. And I just want to see at least that part in place. It might not change a lot of things, but it's this outstanding item, and I just don't know how to move it faster forward.
So there's a couple of possibilities going forward. Typically, we would simply post the comprehensive plan, which has been delivered to the council. We'd do a notice for public hearing, and you'd have a public hearing where the planning board would make a presentation to the council and to the public. The public would have their opportunity to give the council the public's feedback about the comprehensive plan, and the council would vote to amend, vote to send back to the planning board for amendments, or approve. That's typically the two steps that would come next. We've heard some interest in doing a third step, or inserting a third or maybe a fourth step, which includes a meeting with the planning board to talk about the process and the product, and a meeting possibly with planning staff for the same purpose. If speed and efficiency are the objective, then the simple notice of public hearing and public hearing would be the most efficient way to proceed. If a discussion, is needed with the planning board, then we have to find a place on the calendar where that can happen.
Rob, can I just clarify something that was said? If I may, people?
Sure.
With regards to the existing plan of record that the town adopted, I think in 2016, the general principles and philosophies associated with that plan were carried through, Deb, to the 2021 plan. When I came on board in September, the plan was, we'll say, probably about 95% done. The remaining 5% were wrapped up in the preceding months. And then the planning board adopted the plan in its 99.9% capacity. We've spent the last, we'll say 6 to 8 weeks making final editorial edits and typo corrections to that plan as it was passed through to town council. So there was some confusing there, that the approval by the planning board and the movement to town council wasn't an overhaul. They were editorial edits, graphics, typos, table of contents, and graphics to get it to the town council so that you could take it to a public hearing. But the general principles and philosophies of the old plan were carried through. However, it is a rewrite of your existing plan. Someone didn't just take the 400-page document that existed and just change sentences within those sections. So it could be considered a full rewrite of your existing plan. Again, the general principles and philosophies that were contained in that plan, affordable housing, energy efficiency, traffic, all those philosophical things were carried forward and updated to a 2021 relevancy. So again, to Rob's point, expedience would be to hold the public hearing and receive public comment. The planning board can go back at any point in time and make edits to the comprehensive community plan. And actually, when you do that, you get to restart the clock also for the update.
All right. All right, so that's a long segment in the manager's report. I'm going to report on just two more things, and that is that the Senior Center and EMS, Emergency Medical Services Division, have been working the lists on vaccination. We've come close. We're getting to the point where it's difficult to fill up appointments for the over 75 population, and we're continuing to do that. But the last vaccination for the over 75 population at Southward School is likely to be March 14th. That's the last day that we have scheduled with the state, and it does look like we will have that group of residents vaccinated by March 14th. There will, of course, be folks who may not have gotten the vaccine, but all other channels, the CVS, the Walgreens, the state program will be operating beyond that date. The Senior Center and EMS have turned their attention to helping others, including teachers. And as I say, the state will be making an announcement tomorrow on that. One last thing that is of note is Town Farm and the new appraisal that's necessary for the National Park Service and the Department of Interior to do their assessment of the land swap with the hospital. That appraisal is underway, and we're hoping to be able to get a report that we can send up to DEM, and DEM can pass on to the National Park Service and Department of Interior soon. That's been slower than we'd like, but when we did that contract about 6 weeks ago now, we knew we'd have a delay because the assessor, the appraisal company had told us that they had a backlog of work. So they're through that backlog, and that project is now moving again. And with that, if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, but I'll end the report.
We have a couple questions. So there is a Councilwoman Bergner.
Yeah, so could I suggest that we have a work session with the planning board to discuss the comprehensive plan? We didn't have like a resolution to the topic, so I didn't know. I wanted to come back and make sure we had a plan to do the plan.
So, yeah, I mean, I have, you know, when we were going through our whole goals and objectives discussions, there's a priority put on getting the comprehensive plan enacted or passed. So I'd be in favor of that option where we put out the public notice, hold the public hearing, get that comprehensive plan in. I definitely think at some point we're going to have work sessions with the planning board to discuss all matters of things, but I'd like to get the comprehensive plan settled first. And we'll talk to the planning board at that time as well.
Susan, this is a one notice item, do you know? 1 week's publication? Do you know?
We normally, if we order it advertised at one meeting, we can advertise for public hearing at the next meeting. So if we put it on the March 22nd agenda, we could advertise it for public hearing on April 12th.
Right.
Does that work?
Yes, I'd prefer that.
Councilwoman Rose?
So I have on two topics here. Would it be beneficial to have a work session with planning before we have a public hearing? I'm a little bit unclear, so I just am wondering what the either the pros or cons of that might be. So that's my first question.
So in theory, we could do a special meeting with a workshop, a work session somewhere between now and the 12th, and still do the notice of publication and the scheduling of the hearing on April 12th. So you could do both in theory. It's just going to require a special meeting night.
I don't know if it's just me being newer to the council, but I still am unclear, and I think it might be helpful to. It would definitely be helpful for me. If other people would find that helpful, is for them to decide. But that's how I'm feeling right now.
I mean, I think that we have a lot to discuss with planning board, but I don't think at this point with the 99.9% done, if we hold a work session in the hopes of telling them to change the comprehensive community plan that they've been working on all this time, it's just going to delay the implementation of that.
Or maybe like an info session. I don't know.
Well, I mean, the public hearing, they're going to present this community plan to us. So then that's our opportunity to learn about it. I mean, we also get it in advance and we can read it before the meeting. And then if we have questions, we can ask them, get clarification. You know, if we decide that we want to make changes at that public hearing, that's within our rights as a council. I think that, you know, that's sort of the process that's laid out for the comprehensive community plan. I would say there's, again, separate discussions. I mean, we've already had that one around affordable housing, but I think when we get the final affordable housing product from Horsley Witten, and there's serious policy proposals for changing, you know, recommendations for changing zoning, density, stuff like that, then that'll be a good opportunity to have that meeting with planning board.
All right, thanks, Abel. So my second question is surrounding vaccines. Rob, I noticed that you said 75 plus. You were having, or not necessarily filling all those appointments because the state has opened up to 65 plus. Can folks who are 65 plus sign up for those appointments? What's that look like?
We've not been given the mission by the state to vaccinate 65 and older. Our mission at the municipal and regional pods is to take care of the most difficult to reach population, which is 75 plus. They're not going to be assigning regional and municipal pods that responsibility. That responsibility will be taken over by a number of regional pods, not South Road, and state pods or state points of distribution. The state point of distribution for Southern Rhode Island will be in West Kingston. We're expecting that site to be up and running on the 15th of March or soon thereafter. We're trying to make sure that there's no gap between the day on which the last first dose is done at South Road and the state pod gets up and running in West Kingston. Just a note on that, the South Road site will continue to follow everybody who got their first dose at South Road through, so their second dose also comes at South Road. But there won't be any new first doses, it looks like, after March 14th.
So folks who are 65 plus will be able to schedule a vaccine in West Kingston, am I correct?
Yes, they will, that's correct.
That's awesome, because we don't have a mass vaccination point here in South Kingston, South County. So that's great news.
We will on the 15th of March.
Great, that's awesome. Thank you.
Or soon thereafter. The state's been trying to, they initially were saying the first week of April. We've got them to move up to, we think we can make the 15th. So we're delighted with the fact that they're really working hard to get to the 15th of March.
Great. Councilwoman Bergner?
I wanted to go back. I like Councilwoman Rose, feel that we do need a work session on the planning, with planning board on the comprehensive plan. We're new. We just really want to understand it. We want to do right by the community. You know, is it possible that we could meet on the 22nd at 6 o'clock for an hour with the planning board and just have a work session? I mean, we really do need to try to understand it. I'm confused on when she's asking and I'm also asking, we would just, it's hard. It's hard at a public hearing to get all the information you need. Is it possible to do a joint work session with the planning board at a special time?
The council can decide what it wants to do with that. I will offer another thing that the administration can do. You can always come into the planning department. Deb and Jessica, if you want to come in and sit down with Jamie and the planning staff and talk through what the process is, or what, you know, if you have any particular questions, staff is always happy to answer questions you may have. I don't offer that as an alternative. I just want you to know that that's an option available to you.
Thank you, but I think I want to hear from the planning. I think sometimes hearing directly from the planning board and it would be helpful. I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm new. I mean, the three of you have been on before, so you have a better understanding of things. But I'm just trying to understand before we adopt this, and I'm not trying to stretch it out beyond April. We can have a work session before the 22nd, just for an hour, or you know, or prior, or a special meeting. I don't want to have a special meeting if that's what people have an issue with. I'm just asking for your indulgence for a work session with the planning board.
Okay with that. March 22nd.
As you're looking at dates, there is, I believe, Mike, I believe there is a requirement that you publish notice for 3 consecutive weeks in the newspaper, including the week before the public hearing. I'm not sure if the 22nd would be possible. I don't know if COVID.
No, I think yeah,
Notification.
that's for the, Jamie, that's for the final hearing where they're going to adopt. If they're
Okay.
just going to have a work session with the planning board, I think they're talking about March 22nd, meeting at 6 o'clock prior to the council meeting. So I think we'd be okay. And I can certainly work on the dates with Susan to make sure that the final date works with all of the advertising. But yeah, for the work session with the planning board, if you want to do that at 6 o'clock, you can do that anytime.
All right. 6 o'clock on the 22nd. Everybody good with that? All right. It's happening.
Just one, is the public hearing, will it be advertised as a joint public hearing with the planning board so they can come, or is it just the town council in April?
It would be, it's the town council's public hearing. Planning board members, as members of the public, would be allowed to comment as citizens.
I would imagine the presentation would come from Jamie himself, although I think we would expect comments from some of the board members.
We'll coordinate that through our department.
Well, one final thing, Rob, while we're here, I know you addressed it in the work session, but there was some public interest in the budget proposal to create a new department of personnel and workforce training.
Yeah, so I did have the opportunity to meet with the Director of Administrative Services on Friday of last week after talking through how our confusion arose at the first meeting at which we discussed that topic. I went back and sort of noodled around what the options are. And the options that I've laid out in an email to the Director of Administrative Services and I'm contemplating are these. The first thing is for us to just scuttle the idea of a department and leave the
function being performed within the manager's office as it is now, with the Director of Administrative Services continuing essentially in the role that she has had. That option doesn't change anything. It doesn't really get us, moving forward on items. If we were to bring on the full-time personnelist that is part of the proposal that was made in the budget, then we begin to address some of the personnel items, but otherwise don't change the program. The second way to do this might be to stand up the department, but not to appoint a permanent department head at this point. We could have an acting department head who would report through the Director of Administrative Services while the department's programs are being fleshed out over time. And then a third option would be to simply stand up the department and have the current Director of Administrative Services retain her title and take on the acting Department of Personnel title as well. Again, none of them change except for doing nothing. None of those options change the budget requirement. It's just a question of how you caption a department and what titles you assign to the people doing the work. So those are still being worked through. In an email exchange today, the Director of Administrative Services and I agreed that we should figure out how to hone in on one of those three options. From my perspective, they're all perfectly acceptable options. They're all good ways to proceed. From my perspective, and I will say this, I regret that anyone's feelings might have been hurt at the first meeting. I certainly did not intend for anyone to get the impression that there was an attempt to, demote or push anyone out. From my perspective, it was just a question of what you call the department and the assignment of a title to the person heading the department. It matters really, as a matter of institution, it matters very little whether the title is Director of Administrative Services, Director of Human Resources and Training, or both. And so from my perspective, both is fine as a resolution to the problem at this point. But we haven't come to that final conclusion. We'll make a recommendation as we get further into the budget process, final recommendation. But those are the three options that I think are live and real options.
Thank you for that update, Councilwoman Rose.
So I just want to clarify here. You said that none of the three options would have a budgetary impact.
I'm sorry. What I meant to say was they wouldn't change the proposal. They would have an impact because we're adding half a person, but they wouldn't change what's been proposed except in the name that is attached to the proposal.
Okay, because I would assume that if you are expanding the scope of that position, like you mentioned in the third option, that there would obviously have to be some type of compensation for expanding the role.
Well, maybe. The question there would be this. If we were to create a department and have the Director of Administrative Service, and now we're getting into a level of personnel discussion that I'd prefer that we not have tonight in an open forum. It is a personnel matter. I've not had the detailed conversation with the director, so I think this is, I'm going into a territory that I probably shouldn't go right now. I apologize. I don't mean any disrespect. I think your question deserves an answer. I just don't know that I should be giving a personnel answer on this topic right now.
All right. Any other questions for the town manager at this point? Seeing none. The next agenda item is appointments, but maybe now would be an appropriate time to take up Councilwoman Bergner's added agenda item proposing an executive session. So would we like to schedule that an upcoming meeting, or Councilwoman Bergner, why don't you tell us what you were envisioning?
Yep, I mean, I think there's some things that we need to understand that we can't talk about publicly. So by noticing and having a closed executive session, we can have a conversation about personnel matters. That's what I was hoping to do.
All right. Other comments on this? Yeah, Councilwoman Rose, your hand is raised, but I'm not sure that it's actually raised. Okay. Rob?
Yeah, just a question. Mike, executive session on personnel, how does it have to be noticed, and what does this motion have to have in it in terms of specificity, detail, or content?
Sure. We can't talk about personnel in general. We need to narrow that down to who the person is that we want to discuss, because under the Open Meetings Act, the exception under personnel requires that notice letters be sent to whoever it is that's going to be discussed in executive session. The person who receives that notice then has the legal right to require that that meeting be held in public session. So we have to identify the who, and then we can schedule it. Because we have to put someone's name on the agenda. We obviously don't talk about what it's about, but we've got to have a name for the agenda.
Are you asking me, or is it just a question to the?
Well, I'm just, so if you want to hold an executive session on personnel, we can't have a vote on something that broad. It has to be, we want to invite someone into an executive session to discuss job performance. That's what personnel exception's all about. It's all about the job performance of an individual. So we'd have to, Deb, if you're making a motion,
okay,
which you are, for instance, you need to say, I would like to move that we set up an executive session on, for instance, March 22nd to discuss personnel involving, and then you need to name someone.
Okay. Okay, so
Just to, I'm sorry, one more point. Everyone who will be discussed in executive session needs to be so noticed.
That is correct. That is totally correct.
okay, so I guess I move that I would like to schedule a closed executive session so the council can get a better understanding of personnel issues involving the town manager, Robert Zernetsky. I'm not sure if there's another person. I at this point, that's all I need.
All right, so that is a proper motion.
Do I hear a second?
Jess Rose, I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and we have a second, so we can discuss things like timing and whether we actually want to have this executive session. You know, I think annually we are supposed to have a performance review of the town manager. I think it's been, I don't know, probably close to a year, so we're probably getting close to that time anyway. And I know we have some new council members, so maybe it's good to do it a little earlier than normal. And I do think you did come in right around January, I believe. So we're right, you know, it's been like a couple of years. So I'd be okay with this. What do other people think?
Can we push it out to April? Anyone feel, I mean, March 22nd is going to be a late night. We already starting early.
I would be okay with April. I don't want to get too far out.
Councilwoman Kelso.
I just want to say that performance reviews are healthy, and so I would be in favor of this.
So I've heard April discussed as a possibility. First meeting in April. No. All righty. Make that happen. All right, sounds good. That brings us to item 10, appointments. We had some nice applicants come in tonight. Do I hear any resolutions?
Rory McEntee, I'll make a resolution appointing Helen Rose DeSanto to the Canvassing Authority.
Deb Bergner, second.
A motion from Councilman McEntee, second from Councilman Bergner. Any discussion? Is there anyone opposed? Imagine. All right, that motion carries unanimously.
Rory McEntee, I'll make a resolution appointing Dan Kimber to the Economic Development Committee.
Deb Kelso, I'll second.
Motion from Councilman McEntee, second from Councilman Kelso. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? That motion carries unanimously as well.
Deb Bergner, I make a motion that we appoint Susan Walsh to the zoning board.
Jess Rose, I'll second.
Motion from Councilwoman Bergner, second from Councilwoman Rose. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? Very good. That motion carries as well. And that brings us to.
One more, please. Mabel,
Excuse me.
I'd like to appoint Brad Heavenor to the Assessment Board of Review.
Thank you for remembering that.
Second.
Motion from Councilwoman Kelso, second from Councilman McEntee. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Susan, was there anything else?
There are actually two different terms expiring on the EDC, one in March, well, March of this year right now, which would extend out till March 2024. And there's one that expires in March 2022. Which term would you like to appoint Mr. Kimber to?
The term ending 2024.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. 11B, new business, is a resolution authorizing an award of bid to Liberty Chevrolet of Wakefield, Massachusetts for the purchase of one 2021 Chevrolet 3500 stake body truck in accordance with all specifications and Rhode Island Master Price Agreement number 559, an amount not to exceed $46,367, further described in a memo from the park superintendent to the town manager dated March 2nd.
Jess Rose will make a motion to accept 11B.
Rory McEntee, second.
Motion from Councilman Rose, second from Councilman McEntee. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? That motion carries unanimously. 11C is a resolution authorizing an award of bid to Malik Tree Service of Harrisville, Rhode Island for municipal tree and stump removal services in an amount not to exceed the amount of $35,339, including a $5,000 contingency, with funding in excess of $20,000 being appropriated from Highway Division's CIP equipment funding, further described in a memo from the Public Services Director to the town manager dated February 24th.
Rory McEntee, I'll make a motion to approve 11C.
Jess Rose, I'll second.
Motion from Councilman McEntee, second from Councilwoman Rose. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? That motion carries unanimously. That brings us to 11D, a resolution authorizing an award of contract to Dakin Applied Americas of Walpole, Massachusetts to furnish and install 2 Bell and Gossett pumps with high efficiency motors at the Public Safety Building in an amount not to exceed $18,000, including a $1,696 contingency, further detailed in a memo from the facilities superintendent to the town manager dated March 1st.
Jess Rose, make a motion to accept 11D.
Rory McIntyre, second.
Motion from Councilwoman Rose, second from Councilman McEntee. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? That motion carries unanimously as well. 11E, a resolution authorizing the town clerk to advertise for order of notice to public hearing relative to a proposed amendment to the town code, Chapter 9, licenses and miscellaneous business regulations, Section 9-21, temporary expansion of licensed premises, restaurants that would extend the expiration date as shown on Exhibit 1.
Deb Bergner, motion to approve item 11E.
Rory McIntyre, second.
Motion by Councilwoman Bergner, second by Councilman McEntee. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? All right, that motion carries unanimously. 11F is a resolution authorizing the town clerk to advertise for order of notice of public hearing to consider proposed amendments to the town code, Chapter 17, taxation, Article 1 in general section 17-1, veterans exemptions. And you can read those changes as proposed. Do I hear a motion?
Rory McIntyre, I'll make a motion to approve 11F.
Deb Bergner, second.
A motion by Councilman McEntee, second by Councilwoman Bergner. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? That motion carries unanimously. 11G, a resolution requesting the Secretary of State to place a municipal bond authorization referendum question on a May 4th, 2021 ballot for the following. Shall an act authorizing the town of South Kingstown to issue not to exceed $85 million general obligation bonds, notes, and other evidences of indebtedness to finance the construction, renovation, improvement, alteration, repair, landscaping, furnishing, and equipping of schools and school facilities throughout the town, and all attendant expenses, including but not limited to engineering and architectural costs, provided that the authorization shall be reduced by the amount of certain grants received from state bond proceeds from the Rhode Island Department of Education or from the Rhode Island School Building Authority be approved. Said question to be placed before the voters at an election to be held on May 4th, 2021. This question is in accordance with enabling legislation pending before the General Assembly.
Jess Rose, I'll make a motion to accept 11G.
So this is Deb Kelso. Mike, how would I go about amending this to the if-then scenario? If not May 4th, then June 8th.
That it would be that simple.
Okay, there it is.
But let's find out if Jess is agreeable to that first, because there's a motion on the floor.
I am.
So moved. Was that a second? Yes. Okay, I think that was a second. We have a motion. We have a second. Discussion. Councilwoman Bergner.
Thank you. I can never find the hand button as fast. I just wanted to say that I think it's a little presumptuous to put this resolution forward. We haven't heard from the state RIDE if they're going to approve the application, nor have, we have the approval from enabling legislation. I just feel that we have processes in place and that I feel that we should follow the process. It's interesting that in some situations we're willing to change the process, and in some situations we hold people to the process, and in some we dispense with the process. So I'm not in favor of putting a resolution, putting the election forward until we have affirmative approval. I don't understand why we would.
Thank you for that. Other comments? Seeing none, will the clerk please take the roll?
Councilwoman Bergner,
Nay.
Councilwoman Kelso,
Aye.
Councilman McEntee,
Aye.
Councilwoman Rose,
Aye.
And Council President Collins?
Aye.
The motion carries 4-1.
Thank you. Item H is a resolution that in anticipation of the possibility of restructuring the committee, Town Council directs the town clerk to advertise for possible vacancies on the school building committee. All qualified residents with experience in architecture, engineering, construction, or construction contraction are encouraged to apply for membership on the committee. Rob?
I would just note that after the publication of this resolution, the school department did reach out to also indicate that the school building committee had noted that there's an interest in having persons with an expertise in education as well. I just note that so the council is aware.
All right, very good. I suppose if somebody wants to make a motion, they could add that little verbiage if they wanted. Or we could just also have a motion on the resolution as it stands.
So this is Deb Kelso. I'd like to make the motion that we approve item 11H, but I would like to add a time limit to it. So we'll take applications for appointments. If we're going to appoint 4 new people, I don't know, for 3 weeks or a month, and then we can hold the interviews all at kind of the same time. I think sometimes when we interview ahead, we lose, you know, I think the earlier interviewees sometimes get overshadowed by the ones that come in later. So I'd like to keep it as concise as the timeline as concise as possible. So I'd like to offer an amendment or the motion with an amended language that would put the applications for this round of appointments, and we can decide if a month is good or 3 weeks is good. I'm open on that point.
So maybe if we're, if we're thinking to have the interviews on that same first meeting in April, we could have the application deadline by the Thursday before that, I guess.
That sounds good to me.
I don't know what that date is off the top of my head. Or maybe the Wednesday before that, just to give.
Yes, please. You saw me looking at my calendar saying, oh no.
What's that date?
That would be the 7th, April 7th.
Okay, so I heard that motion. Did we get that?
Yes.
Okay. Do I hear a second?
Jess Rose, I'll second that.
You have a motion from Councilwoman Kelso, second from Councilwoman Rose. Discussion? Councilwoman Bergner, is your hand up?
Hey, so thank you. So I'm confused. There's 1 vacancy or there's 4 vacancies? It doesn't say that there are 4. I'm confused on what we're advertising for. Only one vacancy or restructuring all the positions?
Rob, do you want to?
Sure. So the resolution was drafted in anticipation of possible change. You have 1 vacancy now. The school building committee had in November at its November, I want to say 22nd meeting, although I don't recall the exact date, in November had recommended the restructuring of the school building committee. They believe that as we come into the construction phase, design and construction phase of the project, that the project would benefit from having design and construction expertise, and that they'd like to see, and the recommendation to the council from the school building committee was that we take some of the town employees off, in fact, perhaps all of the town employees off, and replace those persons with experts in construction design and construction contracting, the sorts of things. And by the way, I'll come back and say education expertise was also mentioned in a correspondence to me last week. But the idea being that you want to make sure that you've got the right skill sets for that phase or those two phases in the project. Construction, design, and construction contracting. So this just anticipates that that change might happen and gets you folks in a queue who are willing to serve should that opportunity arise.
Councilwoman Berger.
So it could be that we appoint just one or up to four. I mean, I'm kind of concerned with the optics of, there's 4 people who voted against the school facility plan in the building committee, and so that all 4 of those are being removed. It sort of looks kind of interesting maybe to the community that now all 4 of them are now going to be replaced. I understand what's being said, but I just want to say that the 4 dissenting people on the stage 2 are now the 4 that you're replacing.
So yeah, I was a dissenting vote on the stage 2. I've spoken to Zach and I've spoken to Mark about this. I don't think anybody sees it as being, pulled off the committee because of a vote that they've made or anything like that. I think that the issue is simply whether the skill sets are the right ones and whether we're doubled up. I mean, if we look at the composition of the committee now, we have 2 finance people, 1 from the schools, 1 from the town. We have 2 facilities managers, 1 from the schools, 1 from the town. We've got the town manager and the superintendent. We have the folks who are involved in the project not being folks who do construction, not folks who do design, not folks who do construction contracts. So the question is really about just getting the right skill sets. There's nothing, I think, in the recommendation that the school building committee made that, in fact, the recommendation was made before that vote, before the vote that resulted in 4 people saying no. The recommendation to change the composition of the committee as we move through the phases came before the no votes. So I don't think that's the issue at all.
But it came after the delay vote in September. So it just looks a little optically interesting to me. Are we advertising specifically for those things? Like the skill sets, engineering, education, construction? And would that person have no interest in participating in the construction of the project? Or I'm assuming, right? The person on the building committee would have no interest, no conflict of interest in the school facility project themselves, right?
Yeah, it's going to have to be a contractor who will not be doing work on the construction project. Yes, that's correct. If it's a contractor and if it's a design person, they're not designing the project. Yes, conflict of interest laws would apply.
All right. Other questions or comments on this motion?
Can we just restate the motion? I know there was a timeline for advertising, and did we have all of that for collecting applications and interviewing on the same night? Is that in the motion?
Yes, it's April 7th is the application deadline. And then the idea would be to schedule all the interviews that following meeting in April. Right. I think we'll take the roll on this one.
Councilwoman Bergner,
I'm going to abstain.
Councilwoman Kelso,
Aye.
Councilman McEntee,
Aye.
Councilwoman Rose,
Aye.
and Council President Collins.
Aye.
The motion carries 4-0
Very good.
with
Thank
1
you.
abstention.
And that brings us to the end of tonight's agenda. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Jess Rose, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilwoman Rose, second from Councilman McEntee. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? Well, very good. I guess that vote is unanimous as well. Thank you for everybody keeping it quick tonight. We're out of here by 9:32. Have a good night. See you in a couple days.
See you Wednesday.
Be well. Take care.